until I get on the air, though.
Altmaier batted and intercepted, and it's Walcott bringing it back. Could he? Wire to wire, Sick'em Bears. How about it?
Welcome to Sick'em 365 Radio.
And it's intercepted on the ricochet. The defensive end, Utley, has had a terrific game in the right place there.
Sick'em 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
6 seconds to go. Mordecai going to step up. One last play. Throw to the end zone. Into the end zone. Knocked around and caught. It is caught. Reggie Robertson with the deflection and the touchdown. Are you kidding me? SMU on the final play of the game. 5th touchdown pass for Tanner Mordecai. Heavens.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
3rd down and goal now. And Prescott wide open. No problem. Terrence Steele on the tackle eligible.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
Well, good afternoon. Sick'em 365 Radio and 365 Sports. David Smoak and also Craig Smoak in-house. Paul Catalina is out this week, and he told me I could tell you this. Paul got engaged in Hawaii. He'll be back next week. Also, Colt Barber and family added a new barber to their family, and that happened as well. So a couple of nice little personal notes today to start our show. What's going on with college football? It's been kind of a quiet weekend. Yes, there's speculation. Yes, there is this, and there are thoughts that this could happen. I spoke with somebody that is very much entrenched. I think that's a good way to put it, entrenched with a lot of what happens with the with the ACC. And the feeling there is this. Why would, in any way possible, first of all, if the Big Ten was thinking about anything ACC, ESPN's not going to let that happen. That's their conference. Even with the long extended grant of rights, that's their conference. They're not going to let that happen. And, of course, we will hear today from David Teel about the ways of whatever is the truth when it comes to grant of rights with the ACC. He'll join us today at 4 o'clock. Also, it benefits ESPN that the ACC stays where they are, at least tries to grow if they can. And then also it would, if the ACC was rated, it would risk one of ESPN's best schools, and that's Clemson. Of course, with all the other schools around the SEC, along with Florida State, Miami, and much more. So we're kind of in a holding pattern. And as Craig, we've said before, and welcome back for you again today after you having a chance to get away on Friday, it's really we are in a, okay, this happened. Now this has to happen. And I think we're probably in a little bit of a holding pattern.
Yeah, good to be back. I mean, first, let's go back to the big announcement for Paul and Colt. I mean, congratulations to those guys. Paul, Mr. I'll never get married. I know that was always just kind of a defense mechanism more than anything else. And so not surprised to see him go on this trip and get hitched. And, not surprised that he didn't say anything before he left, given your last engagement announcement that you nearly broke for somebody close to us. So he was smart to keep it quiet. And congratulations to Colt as well on the new kiddo. Good for them. But, yeah, I mean, the realignment stuff has, stayed out there in terms of just churning social media and lots of people commenting and lots of, new experts and lots of people that, suddenly have a billion sources right now during this really crazy important time where nobody seems to know what's going on, but they don't have them, any other time when there's information needed. So you got to really kind of wade through all that's out there and kind of figure out for yourself what's, worth, I guess, chewing on a little bit, what's worth taking into consideration, and what's just people clearly throwing stuff at the wall and just hoping to garner a following. Because I think there's a lot of that going on right now as well. So, I've seen stuff here and there. I mean, I don't know about the ACC and, what you're talking about there. I know that's part of the conversation, but, I don't know how much that's really changed since I last talked on Thursday. I don't think it's changed really at all. But we did see here in the last few minutes a couple of different people. It looks like Matt Hayes was one of the first to report this from Saturday Down South, and now Dennis Dodd, who I know has been writing a lot about realignment here lately, he followed up to say that he can confirm it. And, I'm sure there will be others that confirm it for the, fifth time over and whatever. But we at least got a couple of people. So I think it's worth mentioning that Matt Hayes is saying the SEC, for right now, is planning on staying at 16. And that is the desire of their presidents, per that Saturday Down South article. SDS sources, this from, earlier today, SEC wants to end expansion race, stay at 16 teams. Unnamed athletic director says we're positioned at 16 for a robust future. The need just isn't there. I don't see any expansion move as threatening to us. And it goes on and on about value and the product and things like that. But obviously, if that's the case, on the one hand, it's the SEC saying it, and even if it was the ACC or the Big 12 or whoever, they're going to say what they have to say for the time being. So I don't buy for a second that it's completely off the board if something crazy were to happen. But it's also kind of hard for something too crazy to happen at this point because everybody's on such high alert. The odds of a Oklahoma, Texas, or a USC, UCLA exit are a lot lower than they were here with the two LA schools doing what they did a couple of weeks ago. But what that does do, if that does turn out to be true and they stand pat for the time being, then what does that do to the realignment landscape? I think it settles it down and slows it down tremendously because now you're not having to worry about the ACC getting poached ultimately or buyouts and, oh my God, what if Clemson leaves 10 years earlier than they're technically allowed to, which I still don't know how that was going to happen. But, for those that want to throw that thought out there that the ACC could somehow crumble in on itself and then teams leave and then, all of a sudden the SEC's at 20 and then the Big Ten's at 20 and then all that stuff that we've been talking about for a couple weeks. This here would pretty much put a stop to almost all of that talk.
Yeah, well, it would. It would calm. And in fact, when I was trading a text or two back and forth with someone that I had a chance to have a very deep conversation with on Friday, I hope your weekend was full of a lot of fun. I do feel like, he goes, I don't see anybody right now, anything happening. I feel like you're going to kind of see kind of a settling of the dust settles for now. It all still, of course, we know ties back to Notre Dame. We'll have a guest on today, Brian Driscoll, who covers Notre Dame. The SEC making, or at least with that particular a discussion and or story, that makes sense. That does not mean that the Big 12 is sitting pat or standing pat, that they are still doing their due diligence as they move into the future. One quick note, Kyle Kallander, who is the commissioner of the Big South Conference, will join us here in a couple of minutes. He will join us. We have about 15 minutes with him. He has been through a conference being torn apart. He was the last commissioner of the Southwest Conference, and he's also seen his own conference have people come and go. He will join us here in the next minute or two.
Okay.
Now, what about sponsors? What about sponsors that are attached to so many things in college football that may watch this arms race, who are attached to certain things? Do you think any of them, we talked about how no one cares about the fans. Everyone cares about the money. But sponsors do have kind of a lobbyist-type clout when it comes to college football, conferences, teams, programs, and more. And you wonder if, in fact, any of them are kind of watching what's happening and making their own phone calls like, hey, if this happens, if this gets too much this big, then we might be left out with what we can do based on what budget they might have available and what they can do as well. So that's something to think about as somebody gave me that little nugget over the weekend as well. Kyle Kallander, Garrett, go ahead and lock him in if you don't mind. Now, I mentioned again, ESPN's best interest is to keep the ACC where they are and afloat and also strong. So they're not going to let someone else outside of whoever else they own when it comes to network grant of rights come in and try to pick them apart, like, in fact, it would have been the Big Ten, which is something that does make sense if you think about it as well. Who's the first person that might also get to this point? Stop the madness. This is enough. Is it such the almighty dollar that you can't stop the madness? That this is too much? Let's push back because we know they don't listen to the fans. That's another thing I was talking about with the sponsors. Who will that be? Garrett, waiting on him? Okay. We also, as I mentioned, David Teel will kind of help break down what's going on with the ACC at this particular point. He had a great article over the weekend. Brian Driscoll on Notre Dame. He sent me a text over the weekend that said they're not doing anything, man. They love this independence until basically they have no other choice, which we've always discussed and said from pretty much the beginning on that. And then we had the great news today. Paul Catalina engaged to Amanda over the weekend. They're in Hawaii. Colt Barber and company having their baby. But also a kick in the gut that Ted Nichols-Payne, one of the great engineers in all of broadcast history, passed away yesterday at 56. Brad Sham, voice of the Cowboys, joins us about Ted Nichols-Payne at 5:30. We're now joined by Kyle Kallander, the commissioner of the Big South Conference on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Kyle, thank you very much for your time today. Do you think that we're in a calming pattern, kind of everything letting the dust settle when it comes to college athletics, or is it something that every day you look at your phone or your emails or someone calls you and you never know what's going to happen?
Maybe all of the above. You know that maybe publicly there's some calm and things have settled down a little bit, but you know that underneath the surface, the ducks are paddling as hard as they can. So there's no question there's ongoing conversation and evaluation at this point in time. I do hope that cooler heads are prevailing here and that people can kind of settle down, take a look, and take some time to understand really what's the best thing to do moving forward.
When last year Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC almost a year ago occurred, and then just a week or so ago when USC and UCLA occurred in the Big Ten in that story, did you know immediately there could be a trickle-down effect, not just with those Power 5 and Autonomy 5 conferences, but somehow could also eventually and has reached the Big South?
Well, you always are concerned about that, and you always feel like, yes, there will be trickle-down. We haven't, obviously the Big 12 made their move, and there was some move in the Group of Five in response to that. There has been movement below that. We've been impacted, although it's not necessarily directly related to those moves. But anytime there's movement, there is a trickle-down effect. And one of the things that I chuckle about a little bit is, you hear that there's some concern on the part of some of the major conferences about how big Division I is getting. But, part of it's self-inflicted, right? The larger they become, then the stealing begins, and pretty soon conferences are looking around and saying, well, where am I going to get more members? And you got to go to Division II. So that just expands Division I even further. So it is all a process. There's no question there's a trickle down. I was just having a conversation with another commissioner this morning about the latest Big Ten Pac-12 movement and wondering what that trickle down now is going to look like. And I think this could have even bigger ramifications in that regard in terms of the kind of change in movement that you're going to see.
Can anybody trust anybody else right now, or do you feel like that because obviously these stories in the last year have popped, and even those sometimes even on their own campuses didn't know.
Yeah, and trust is a tricky word. At least in my chair, I don't sit here and blame other commissioners for the movement that's happening. You understand. I mean, we've all been in the same position. We've all invited schools and brought in schools from other leagues. We've been impacted both ways. So you understand it to a point. But the thing that concerns me is that the action that's taking place is really to the detriment of college sports generally. And again, you understand the finances behind it, but at the same time, the more you move to the larger conferences, the super conferences, as it were, the more that you have other schools that are going to have a tougher time competing. And I just don't think that's healthy. And one of the things that I am really concerned about, and this is kind of putting my old Southwest Conference hat on a little bit from way back when, is you lose the rivalries. You lose a lot of what's special about college athletics. So, the Oklahoma-Nebraska rivalry went by the wayside a long time ago, Kansas-Missouri, Texas A&M. And again, I'm not sitting here saying, well, gosh, we need it the way it used to be. But at the same time, I think the more that we go down this path, the more we're kind of eating our young here. And I just get really concerned about the future of college athletics and its distinctiveness from the professional model. I think those lines are more and more blurred all the time, and I just really worry about what it's going to look like ultimately.
You were the last commissioner the last year of the Southwest Conference, which eventually became the Big 12, with the Big 8 and Southwest Conference combining, and others were left out in the cold. What was that year like, watching, like it's like in sports terms, kind of almost a funeral?
The end was, for sure. The last few months, that really was kind of what we were doing, because we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with the intellectual property of the Southwest Conference, what we were going to be doing with all our records, our paraphernalia. It was like an estate sale at that point in time. We went into it, and I obviously eyes wide open. They named me the last commissioner. There weren't a lot of people around to choose from, quite frankly, but the Southwest Conference had such an amazing history, in so many positive ways, that I want to be positive about it. I wanted to really celebrate the history of the Southwest Conference, and our membership wanted to do that as well. And so we had a great year. We went into it. We had big celebrations. We brought people back to Football Media Day. Sammy Baugh came out of his hibernation and joined us, which was, I don't think people had seen him for a long time. So, we really looked back on the history of the conference and really had a great celebration, going into the year. We had tremendous competition and performance in football. Our basketball tournament in Reunion Arena was probably the best it's been from an attendance standpoint, in many years. So in many ways it was really a great year, but then you kind of got to the end where you knew you were counting the days, and it got to be a little bit strange. You immediately moved into your position now, I think 25th or 6th year in the Big South. How much of that experience of what you saw that last year, how much of that have you used in running the conference you run now for a quarter of a century? Well, it was a great experience for me. And again, I knew exactly what I was getting into. It was a one-year gig, right? But to be able to sit in the chair where you're having to make those decisions, you're negotiating television contracts, you're selling sponsorships, you're working with the ADs and presidents. It was an invaluable experience for me. And that's how, in addition to the celebration, I knew that personally I would be able to benefit just from an experience standpoint. So I was really able to take some of those learnings and the skills that I got from that last year and apply it here. I was actually fairly young when I got this job, and I think I was 38 years old. And it really served me well. And it's been great. I mean, the Big South Conference has been a wonderful league to be a part of. The people here have been tremendous to work with. Everybody's been supportive of what we've been trying to accomplish. over that 26 years, we've been able to do a few things. So I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have the career that I've had.
When you mentioned some of the rivalries, and there have been rivalries that have just obliterated, and Nebraska OU just started theirs back again last year. We know A&M and Texas haven't played. It's been a decade, and now that might, of course, that be rejuvenated with the SEC coming up in a couple of years or whenever that happens. And then, you hear about just the fundamentals, the tradition, the history, the atmosphere of college sports, whatever else. And when you say that, or when I say that, or anyone says that, they're almost like hammered about, things change. And we understand that. Typewriters became now laptops, et cetera. 8-track now is whatever we have. Do you kind of get offended like I do when someone says, well, that things do change? Aren't there certain things maybe that shouldn't?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course things change. Frankly, I was a proponent of name, image, and likeness well before it became, the latest term. Now, I don't really support going as far as it has with endorsements and, of course, not in favor of boosters being involved. But I've always felt student athletes should be able to benefit from their name, image, and likeness in some way. So I understand change, and change is important. But again, if we're really thinking about college athletics and what's special about college athletics that's different from the professional level, if we want to protect that collegiate model and the distinctiveness, rivalry, that's one of the things that I think makes it special. People, you see it down there, you see it in the SEC and all over the country. I mean, there's nothing that gets the blood going and gets people more interested than the great rivalry. And, before I went to the Southwest Conference, I was at the University of Washington. That's my alma mater. And so now to see what's happening there, and granted, the Apple Cup and the Washington State rivalry is much bigger, but I was there in the late 80s, early 90s with Don James in football, and those games against USC were unbelievable. But now that's going away. So, it's sad in a lot of ways to see that. So I just think we need progress is always going to take place. Things are going to change, but let's not lose sight of the fact that, there's some things that are worth keeping. And let's not again throw the baby out with the bathwater. You mentioned Washington. I was going to bring that up. As an alum, what do you want to see with them? At this point, because we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I think you'd like to see, retain a lot of the same relationships and same rivalries, but at the same time, how can you're going to have to do something. I don't think the Pac-10 Pac-12, Pac-10 now, can stand pat. But at the same time, I would hate to see the Washington States and the Oregon States get left behind, or Washington for that matter. So I'm not sure what the answer is. It's kind of a challenge at this point, but I don't think it's healthy when Washington, joins a conference and they're got to play in North Carolina and Florida every week. You're sending your women's soccer team across the country, or men's tennis team across the country. I just don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. So you'd like to see something put together more regionally, but I don't know what that answer is at this point. Well, and I know you have something else to get here in about 2 or 3 minutes, but since you know about the history and tradition of Washington and what they what they represent in many ways athletically and academically, some of the schools that were a part of the Southwest Conference, although a lot of them have left now. Do you see them in any way as someone that could be a good match if, in fact, the Big 12 was to grow? Yeah, it could be. It could very well be. I know, back when Larry Scott first got to the Pac-10, I think at that point he was having a lot of discussions with the schools in Texas and in the Midwest. I think there are a lot of similarities from institutions in the Big 12 with the University of Washington. It's not the greatest fit geographically, but again, from an institutional standpoint, there are some similarities and some synergies there. So that could be something that would make some sense. Kyle, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Hopefully there is kind of a calming effect or a little bit of peace and quiet with college athletics in the landscape. We appreciate you. Absolutely. Thanks, David. Appreciate you having me. Kyle Kallander, he's the commissioner of the Big South Conference. 25 or 6 years there. He was the last commissioner of the Southwest Conference and watched as that thing was going down and did everything he could, as he mentioned.
And I thought it'd be kind of an interesting part, a different perspective of somebody that saw a conference that he was a part of, brought in to try to at least stabilize it until it was over, and watch that transition as well.
Yeah, there was some interesting stuff there. It wasn't, knowing what to expect really, but, certainly getting different point of views on kind of how this has worked previously and the effect that it's had is always useful and always allows you to be a bit more informative because, for some wave of people listening, this is like their first big realignment, or maybe their second, even though like the second might be, just the latest news, but last year maybe was their first big experience with realignment and that waves kept rolling into this summer now. But yeah, for others, I mean, for me, I know certainly the dissolution of the Southwest Conference and then that creating the Big 12. I was a Big 12 kid growing up, basically. So that was, kind of, I guess, my wheelhouse. And then for you, you've seen obviously many more, changes and realignment. So as much as you get like a new crowd who like this is brand new or whatever, or just the crowd in general that loves all of the craziness that happens. I said this whenever NIL was creating quite the disruption and there was talk about just all of the insane things that were going on that nobody could really wrap their heads around because it was all happening at once in college football, like these agents of chaos that just love the chaos. There's people that definitely just love realignment. They love realignment. They love talking about it all the time, and I enjoy it too, but it's not brand new by any means is my point. I mean, it's been happening, in some cases with schools multiple times over the decades, and here we are, and here's the latest. And I think there's probably a lot of people disappointed that there hadn't been any action, going on over the last few days, but we don't know what's being talked about behind the scenes. And I think we're also getting a good idea that, after Oklahoma and Texas, everybody seemed to be on watch, and then boom, all of a sudden here comes the LA schools, and then everybody's like, okay, now wait a freaking second, like this is way too much. And I think we're seeing everybody, with their guards up now more than ever, and trying to ultimately, do what's best for their schools. But I think also having to realize that the decisions being made are going to have an effect on everybody, and it's not just about doing what's best for your school. And I think that maybe that's creating some of this kind of slowdown in terms of just, oh my gosh, grab the life raft. And I think everybody's going, wait a second. Stop panicking. Let's all look around and see what's what and figure it out from here. And so I think there's a lot of figuring out going on. And, going from talking to one commissioner to mentioning that starting on Wednesday, we'll be in Arlington at Big 12 Media Days. And Brett Yormark, the new commissioner, is going to speak on Wednesday morning. And it'll be very interesting to see what he has to say because he's got a lot to address. Even if he was just a brand new commissioner walking into a totally normal scenario, he would have a lot of questions to answer. But this being not a normal scenario at all with what all's going on and just the future of the Big 12 having been in such doubt over and over again the last couple of years in particular, it'll be very interesting to see what he has to say. But, the more thoughts the merrier as far as I'm concerned. And clearly there's a lot of people that are a bit concerned about just how small, some people may want to make this and just the effects that it'll have on college sports as a whole because, it's not just all about football, even though that's kind of how it seems sometimes.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And one part of all of this constant up and down the roller coaster, the emotions, that all of a sudden your team is a part of it and then others are left behind. The Big 12 has been a part of this now, again, since Nebraska, Colorado left, then it was A&M and Missouri, and then Texas, Oklahoma, as they're in that transition, but other conferences have been affected as well. What we have tried to do is, for example, have writers who cover Oregon State or Washington State or Washington or Oregon, but also other conferences, commissioners who have been a part of this before, and how the domino effect affects them. And so we will continue to do that as well. And here's one thing I do know. There's never going to be just this is the status quo like it was forever and ever and ever and ever. Because even then, back 25, 30, 40 years ago, the Pac-12 grew, the Big Ten grew, others grew, and they'll probably grow again. The question, and no one has the answer to this, is how much will they continue to grow? How many conferences will get from 16 to 20? Although part of the news today that, Craig, you brought up, appears the SEC for now feels pretty good about staying at 16.
Yeah, I mean, that's the report. That's from Saturday Down South. That's Dennis Dodd coming out a couple hours later and saying, yeah, me too. I also can report this, and I'm sure there have been others. I just haven't seen them that have third and fourth confirmed it or whatever. But, I mean, that's the report. believe what you want to believe. I can't sit here and I wish we did have somebody who could just go like, boom, that's true, and boom, that's not. I mean, coming from that source, you assume that it's true, but there are a lot of rumors that fly around during realignment. Who was it I was seeing? Was it Heartland that was bringing up SMU to the Big 12? I thought I saw a post about that either last night or earlier today, that there was some little scuttlebutt about that. SMU, who you mentioned, you reported over a year ago, or about a year ago, was one of those 4 teams that the Big 12, before all this other stuff was happening, this was post-OU Texas, so this was about probably a month from right now, this time last year. Fast forward a month, last year, and that's when we would have been talking, I think, about obviously the fallout from Oklahoma, Texas, but then ultimately the other schools that were being discussed, and SMU was one of those 4 schools that the Big 12 was apparently eyeing. So when I saw that, I did think there was some credence to it, because we know that the Big 12 has looked and talked and thought about SMU before, but it just mentioned them solely, and I didn't delve too much further. I don't know if there was other mentions, but at this point, to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Bringing in SMU, I think that some other dominoes would have to fall, in my opinion. But there is that out there as well, and obviously Notre Dame will be talking about them. That's going to be the big domino, that if there is going to be this period of kind of quiet and calm now as the season starts to begin, that would be the one piece that could fall that would really just churn it all back up, again, and really cause the domino effect. Yeah,
when the Big 12 had to respond to Texas OU, those 4 we had from pretty much from day one. Brigham Young, of course, made sense. Cincinnati was a good grab, and I know there was always debate about Houston. They're in, and now obviously with UCF as well. And then there were thoughts that if the college football expansion, the championship expansion had occurred, then maybe others, and including the Big 12, would have to go bigger. Doesn't mean they were, depending on who you talk to. And the 4, and one of the schools that was brought up a little bit as a possibility, SMU was one, USF was one. And I don't know, a lot of people will debate that, oh my God, it never happened, because when the college football playoff expansion hit a roadblock, that ended any other opportunities, at least at the time, and maybe for a while, for expansion, since the new 4 were coming in.
SMU, USF, Boise State, and who was the 4th one? SMU, Memphis, yeah. Now, those were the second wave, if the Big 12 had decided to have gone that direction, that they were at least exploring, according to who he was talking to, who, that was where we got the heads up and all the talk about that first wave. That's obviously helped create a lot of this madness that's going on right now, and obviously will be a big talking point starting next year, especially with those 4 schools joining the Big 12. But, yeah, I saw that, and there's been other, little scuttlebutt out there. Certainly SMU, going back to them, though, and following up on that, I mean, that's a team that I know John Wilner, who's out there covering the Pac, probably to the point of exhaustion. Those Pac-12 reporters are out there throwing every scenario imaginable, to the masses. And, that includes joining up with the Big 12, which I don't know, that just seems really unlikely. That includes, poaching teams or whatever. And one of the teams he has mentioned over and over that I guess his sources are mentioning and throwing out there is SMU, because of the Texas tie and the Dallas market, although we know that's not really the Dallas market, just like TCU's not really the DFW market either. But, SMU is a team that's getting at least some looks throughout this, scuttlebutt phase, and I'm not sure if they're any closer to that actually becoming something that is more than just rumor. But, if they play their cards right and the way things are going, maybe they can find themselves getting a step up, because they are kind of almost, I guess, next in line, you would say, as far as the Texas schools go. But that's interesting.
I agree. And again, a lot of you commented about some of the schools we mentioned. Some don't want it. Some don't like it. Some of you think it's not a bad idea. Hey, and it's a constant, ever-changing deal. The Big Ten's network, when they announced that thing, whatever, 1 billion, that then you would think is the next, creates whatever happens next.
Yeah.
Tony Altimore, who's a great friend of our show, he's a stats and analytics guy and also consultant. He sends great graphics, and he's sent things that have been 100 and some pages before. We've had him on. He sent one today, put one up today on his Twitter feed about the men's basketball money. All of this is driven. All of it is driven by football money. All of it. All of it is. No matter how good your conference is with basketball, no matter how good your team you like is good in basketball, no matter if they won a national championship recently or they're a blue blood or not, he put up a graphic of how much more money could some of these Power 5 conferences generate if, in fact, they separated from the NCAA. Because the NCAA, all of the money that's gathered, all of it that's made from the NCAA men's basketball tournament, then it doesn't go just to 351 schools. It goes to everybody. It basically subsidizes a lot of budgets around the country. What would happen if they took that away and they just kept it amongst themselves? Tony Altimore's got a graphic about that. That doesn't mean they'll do that. And I'm always try to help the young or the smaller if you can. You want them to earn it as well. And that's next on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. State Fair tornado fries, nachos, and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
At Allen Samuels in Waco, the new 2022 Impressive Wagoneer Series 2 and 3 have 2.9% for 72 months, plus $4,500 competitive bonus cash going on now. That's right, and $4,500 bonus cash. This incentive on the new 2022 Wagoneers for a limited time only at Allen Samuels in Waco. First responders get $500 extra cash. Come shop the new car and truck inventory today at Allen Samuels Waco.
Come by, let's be friends.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don's Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott, covering Conroe and Houston, 936-756-7717 or cam.heathcott@edwardjones.com. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
You know what would make this moment better? Pizza. Dough made from scratch and an Italian family sauce recipe pizza. 3 fresh signature cheeses making a melty blanket of perfection pizza. Like loads of premium toppings like crispy Old World pepperoni, savory Italian sausage, and fresh sliced veggies pizza. That's Marco's Pizza. Visit marcos.com and make any moment better. And with 4 locations in Waco, Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and soon to open in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma. And they have to come here. They're used to lights. They're used to water in their mouth. They're used to experience. They already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim 365 Radio text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
I mentioned before we spoke with Kyle Kallander, the Big South commissioner, about the horrible news today from Ted Nichols-Payne, or from yesterday. I saw something from Brad Sham about Ted Nichols-Payne, who suddenly died at the age of 56. We're going to honor him because he was one of a kind and helped us a lot when it came to technical and engineering when we traveled with our show now or what we did before. Brad Sham will join us today. No, not even discussing Cowboys, just about Ted Nichols-Payne. And it makes you always say, hey, tell somebody you haven't spoken to in a while how much you love them or how much they mean to you, because you never know when they're gone. One other note, locally and in the state of Texas, there are the possibilities of rolling blackouts today. And that is out there. And so if all of a sudden we just poof disappear, it could be that. And so wanted to give you a heads up on that. And then one more note, Robert Griffin III will be the Randy Moss replacement on Monday Night Countdown. RG3 continues to compile more and more opportunities in his broadcast career. We're now joined by our good friend, Tony Altimore. He, of course, an analyst, consultant, stats, analytics, and much, much more. And he had put something up today earlier on Twitter about, we hear a lot about football revenue. Well, what about basketball revenue? Men's basketball, that's another revenue sport. No, not yet, Garrett. Does not put it up yet. We're now joined by Tony on the phone. So, Tony, what made you go from the football revenue, which is everything, it seems, to kind of looking at what might happen if they stop sharing some of the men's basketball money?
Well, with due respect to the soon-to-be Mrs. Paul, I was actually a little frustrated with some of the silly things you kept hearing about Kansas, where people were saying, oh, Kansas should go to the Big East, and just a lot of, like, silly nonsense. And I know we all know there could be more money in basketball, but football is everything. And so I wanted to kind of answer that question of how much money really could there be in basketball? And so I looked at it kind of from an extreme end and kind of an eat what you kill mindset, and thought, for each of the conferences, if they were to really divide the money up sort of on a pro rata basis, they use a thing called units right now for a small piece of the money. But if they gave all the money out by units and stopped all their subsidy programs and all the revenue sharing and the paying for all of the services that they give and the tournaments and everything that they give to the lower divisions, how much money could there be available for the schools, and how would that move the needle relative to football? Because we know right now basketball accounts for something like 5 to 10% of what football does. We know that in areas like the ACC it's a little more, and then for conferences that don't play serious football like the Big East, it's everything. So I wanted to take a look at what those numbers could be, and I'll tell you, they were actually a little bigger than I thought they would be.
All right, we just put the graphic up, leaving money on the table, and also kind of, Garrett, leave it up, please. Putting money on the table and also a lot of the stuff underneath of it. So you want to go kind of, there's a left graph and there's a right graph, and also from the Big 12 and down.
Yeah, so the first thing I looked at is sort of what is the potential versus current. And the current is a little bit of a fudge factor estimate. So the NCAA uses a wacky calculation. It's called units, and it's of units on a 6-year rolling basis. Rather than, and of course with conference realignment and changes and all that, I figured it'd be a lot easier. I just did 2 years. So this is just based on the last 2 years, right? So for example, the Big 12 has done particularly well in the last 2 years with Baylor and Kansas winning it all. So you guys are the highest. Looking at this allocation. Now, again, for anybody who's going to fret, in a real deal, you'd probably have these would be a little more even, right? You'd probably say to each conference, like, you get a certain amount and then a certain piece of it would be allocated. But this is just purely eat what you kill. But looking at that, the Big 12 schools would be able to add about $17.5 million per school to their athletic revenue. The Big 10 would be looking at $17 million. That's, of course, this is adjusting. So this has moved Texas and OU to the SEC. It's moved USC and UCLA to the Big 10. It's moved Houston to the Big 12. The Big 12, actually, believe me, US actually, funny enough, did better in realignment, losing Texas and OU as far as basketball money goes, hypothetically. The ACC, of course, would do very well. Looking here, like $11 million for the ACC and for the Big East. Now, for the Big East schools, remember, because they don't have football, this would be a pretty hefty boom for the Big East schools. The SEC, they're not always a basketball power, but certainly have done fine. The Pac-12, a little bit kicked in the gut. They got fewer teams. Of course, we yanked out their two best earners over the past couple of years. So that number is probably a little artificially low. And then, of course, the ACC will also low because we yanked out Houston. So you see that there's a lot of money potentially. But if you look on the right there, that takes that same number and that shows it relative to some of the estimates that we're looking at for football for 2026, 2027. And you start to see, okay, yeah, that's a lot of money, but it doesn't move the needle. So, for example, the people that are talking about, should Kansas go to the Big East? Well, that's utter nonsense. I mean, you're talking about a difference here of $69 million to $11 million. Just stop talking about that, guys. That's what you're thinking. But I was actually impressed. For the Big 12 and ACC, where their football earnings are not as high, this is something that could add real dollars to them.
So, of all the conferences, of the major Power 5 conferences, and yes, the Big East is in there. We know what they do in basketball, and the American Conference is like right there on the cusp of always just there at part of just below the Power 5. So among that, the Big 12 would actually gain the most revenue if they were to do this?
Well, yeah, and this is, of course, it's based on a totally eat what you kill. The Big 12's had the last two champions.
Right.
So anything that was, and not just the last two champions, but also a number of other teams have done great. So anything that is allocated, however money is based on wins, and the money right now has a wins component to it too, with the unit. So the Big 12 for the next 6 years will continue to benefit from Baylor and Kansas.
Right.
Just not a lot, but in a thing that handed out huge money, and instead of giving it out to Division II and Division III and the lowly parts of Division I, if they were to give it out to the teams who were actually earning it, the Big 12 could make a lot of money. So when you hear those situations of there is a lot of advantages that the NCAA does provide to all of the divisions and to the Power 5 schools. But if they said, okay, there's a lot of money here on the table that we are leaving on the table here for the little schools, we're sorry, guys, we're earning it. And by the way, I calculated this assuming that every school that participates gets an equal share of the unit. So, for every game you're in, you got an equal share, which is something of what they do now. So even the low conferences would still be getting an $11 million check. And so, that would be, that's $1 million a year for every school in Division I. That's actually pretty good. But what it does, it stops those checks that are going to Division II and Division III.
Tony, then what would keep somebody from wanting to do, like right now with this expansion or this explosion or this arms race in college football, why wouldn't the bigger schools not say, let's go off to our own? I mean, they don't care right now who's being left behind, do they? So why would they care about basketball?
Well, you'd be really shafting everybody because the NCAA, so what the basketball money pays for all the NCAA, and then it pays for all the NCAA tournaments. It pays for all their travel, the NCAA tournaments. It pays for everything. It pays all the NCAA's processing, the scholarship monies that it gives, all that kind of stuff is paid for from the basketball tournament. So if you suddenly said, we're not going to do that anymore, the one thing is you might become, as a university administrator, you might become very, very, very unpopular with all the other university administrators. And, for example, I'm making this up, right? But if you're the president of Villanova and you want to become the president of Penn, They might not take well to the fact that you hose them for money. There are a lot of services the NCAA does provide out of that money, but there's a real question that says, is that money that should be, is that, and of course I look at this from a finance guy standpoint of being like, okay, well, you know what, you guys are enjoying those services, you didn't earn the money that paid for them. So it's just kind of an interesting perspective, and there's no right answer, I think. But those numbers are getting real big, and as you think about UCLA, for example, that they have so much debt, all that kind of problems. UCLA is earning serious basketball money, or should be earning serious basketball money. An extra $17 million a year that UCLA would be looking at might be real nice.
Yeah, and then plus in men's basketball, there's 351 schools in what is Division I, and in football, of course, there's like 113 or so. So there's a massive difference, almost 3 times as many schools. All right, Tony, one more thing, and I'll let you go, and we appreciate you.
Always good chat.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you as well. And what's it been like, you think, from the West Coast, from the Pacific time zone, with all of what happened 2 weeks ago, and then last week it kind of back and forth, like flipping in the wind? Anything that you kind of feel from your end, since you have a lot?
So I've been saying, and nobody believes me, that if there's a way to hold it together, so that the money has to be, if they can get the money to be okay, and there's a way to hold the conference together, I think the other 10 are going to want to hold together. I think it makes sense to add maybe San Diego State and somebody else, but for the TV revenue and for the presence in Southern California. I think there's a lot of stunned feelings. I'll tell you guys, I went to USC, for those of you guys who don't know, but I have lots of friends from all the Pac-10 schools. I feel exactly what you guys felt last year, and I'll tell you that if you haven't been in that position, I think people don't understand how it feels. To see the things torn apart. Of course, we look at this exciting new future. I'm from a Big Ten family. I grew up in Michigan. So I view it as like a wonderful, exciting thing for my school and my family and my friends and all that. But you see it tearing apart these institutions that are great places that really deserve better. And you look especially at schools like Washington State and Oregon State, and I mean these are like scrappy programs that have had more success than they ever should, quite honestly. And they're about to get sort of crapped on by the world, and I feel terrible about it.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time, Tony.
Thank you. And hey, congratulations to Paul. Tell him Amanda, it'll be the ultimate meet the parents, but meet the 20,000 subscribers.
No, that's exactly the 20,000 now, almost 600 or so that are a part of this show, and a lot of it, of course, has been you've been a part of that growth and been a part of the journey. Thank you very much. Again, as Tony said, somebody said, Smokey, you mentioned Colt had a baby. What about his wife, Sarah? Well, yeah,
good point.
I kept saying the family.
Sarah. I mean, to be fair, we don't really deal with her ever. We just, in our brains, just dealing with Colt. But yeah, the mom had something to do with that too. So congratulations to her as well. And yeah, I'm sitting here consuming everything that Tony is saying, just trying to read my way through that chart. I've never been good with numbers, and so I was trying to make sense of it all. But, I mean, just for what that is, it's a very interesting exercise to kind of see how that would play out under that scenario, and to see what kind of money's out there, and to also see, how strong the Big 12 would be if Hoops decided to go a different direction. But we kind of knew that, just in terms of Hoops, that's the conference right now. That's the one that can argue it's the, top of the mountain in college basketball right now. And so it makes sense that, if there were to be some money made, they could be one of those that make some money from Hoops. But, obviously it does sound like a lot would have to take place, and there would definitely be some hurt feelings and a lot of other questions would arise. But it is interesting to take a look at that. And I think there's, like I said, it might be quiet in terms of there's not some big announcement that this team's leaving to go join this conference today or maybe even this week. But I do think we're going to get a lot of interesting stuff once these media days get underway. And I do think it's going to be just really interesting to kind of follow how everyone reacts to this latest wave and what kind of changes we could see that are spurned by yet another wave of realignment, because everybody's very on edge. That much is evident, unless you're sitting, pretty in the SEC, for example.
We will hear from Brett Yormark on Wednesday morning. Dr. Linda Livingstone, president at Baylor, part of the Big 12 Board of Governors, and also the NCAA Transformational Committee, will introduce Brett Yormark, the new commissioner of the Big 12. And hello, like that, at 8:30 Wednesday morning, we will be there. Full throttle. Paul is out throughout the rest of the week, as we can understand, but we will be there full throttle at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. All right, at 4 o'clock today, David Teel does a lot. We've had David on before to cover teams in the ACC and the conference itself, and really kind of over the weekend. His thoughts about how this could happen. Can they be splintered? Will they stay better? Will they get better? All of that next on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
It's plain and simple. Waco Custom Marketplace is the one-stop shop for what you need for tailgating, from charcoal, cold beer, and wine. And, of course, customize your order with brisket, tri-tip, sausage, wings, smoked pork tenderloin, country-style or pork spare ribs, marinated beef and chicken fajita meat, ground beef and chili, meat, hot dogs, and burgers, buns, seasoning, sauces, chips. There's fresh baked bread and kolaches every day, breakfast sausage links. And you can also customize your favorite cut of steaks from select, choice, or prime, bacon wrap fillets, ribeyes, New York strip, sirloin, T-bone, and porterhouse. Full service butcher shop includes pork, poultry, beef, chicken, and seafood, serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. Your one-stop shop for beef, pork, poultry, and seafood needs. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, with locations in Waco and Bryan, and at pioneersboys.com.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube.
We try to comb the country, not just with the Big 12 and what they're doing, because we do that every day, but also throughout the country. David Teel has been someone who's joined us before from the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and he joins us on Sick on 365 Radio and 365 Sports. David, great stuff. The column, the article you did, threefold challenge for imperiled ACC in wake of latest conference realignment. How would you describe the mood right now among most of the leaders or others around the ACC?
I think uncertainty, perhaps a little anxiety, just the great unknowns, and hoping that the conference can stick together.
David, what is, I guess, kind of the feel in terms of just thoughts about whether they're going to be proactive, reactive? How do you kind of see that? Is everybody just sort of standing around kind of looking at everybody, almost a standstill at the moment?
No, I think they want to be proactive. The question is, can they be proactive? Because any move that a conference makes these days is rooted in television revenue. And can bringing a USC and a UCLA to the Big Ten obviously drives the revenue train. Bringing Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC drives revenue. And the ACC, other than somehow getting Notre Dame to join, spoiler alert, that's most likely not going to happen. Is there anything else the ACC can do to bridge the revenue gap that it has with the SEC and the Big Ten? And I think they're exploring those avenues, but whether they come up with an answer is unclear.
Have you had anyone say, hey, we're good, we're going to make it?
I don't know quite in those terms, but I think among some leaders in the conference, there is a realism that, and rightfully so, by the way, that the ACC is never going to be on par with the SEC and Big Ten when it comes to money. And maybe even will be miles behind. But for years now, the ACC has continued to compete at the highest levels in both football and men's basketball and also Olympic sports. The Big Ten has missed the college football playoff more often than the ACC has. And the ACC has won 2 national championships in the playoff era. So it's not as if the league is lagging behind competitively. Can the football be better? 100% yes. But overall, the league remains competitive at the highest levels across the board.
David, in the last 16 national championships, that I know that now we're in this playoff mode, but since Texas won it in 2005 with the great Vince Young and the great win against USC, the SEC's won 12 of 16, but you just said something, and I had written this down. The ACC with Florida State and Clemson is next because Ohio State in the Big Ten is the only team from the Big Ten during that time that's won it. So they have kind of held their own a little bit. I kind of see that maybe that gets overlooked.
I think it does to some extent. And if you look at the 13 programs that have won national football championships in the last 25 years, once the current realignment is done, once USC, Texas, and Oklahoma find their new homes, 10 of those 13 champions will reside in the SEC and the Big Ten. The 3 exceptions compete in the ACC. That would be Florida State, Clemson, and Miami.
David, we've heard and read a lot, as I'm sure you have also dug into it as well, about the grant of rights. We know that it's forever, till 2036 or whatever, and there's thoughts that can people get out of it or whatever. 2 questions. One, It's a lot more difficult, is it not, to even think you can do that? We've even seen Texas and Oklahoma delayed by it. And then number two, if in fact the ACC was to attempt to get larger and they wanted to expand, does that dissolve the current grant of rights?
First of all, your point is quite well taken on OU and Texas. If grants of rights were easy to escape, Longhorns and Sooners would be out the door before 2025. But to date, we haven't seen that. Would expansion automatically dissolve the ACC's grant of rights? My understanding is the answer is no. The only requirement is that the incoming members would have to sign on to that grant of rights, the existing grant of rights. It would not be voided.
Which of the teams do you feel like, if in fact they were to have a problem and to stick together, which I don't know why ESPN would want the ACC to fall apart, because hell, they own it, and they got a great deal with it. Which of the teams are more matched, in your opinion, because I've seen some with the SEC than maybe others in the conference in the ACC?
Depends on what the SEC wants. If the SEC wants just football brands, then obviously you go to Clemson, Florida State, Miami. If the SEC wants new markets, then you're looking at a North Carolina or an NC State, maybe in combination, or you're looking at Virginia Tech. And neither Big Ten nor the SEC has a school in Virginia or North Carolina. I think those markets would be attractive. But guys, with the SEC and the Big Ten pushing $100 million annual distributions to their schools eventually, we have to ask ourselves the question, are any current ACC schools worth $100 million a year to those conferences? Because that's how much revenue they'd have to generate to keep everyone's piece of the pie whole.
Yeah.
And to me, that seems unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
David, what do you think when you hear about the Pac-12 trying to swing some type of loose alliance with the ACC?
I'd like to know more.
Right. Yeah.
What exactly would it look like? What kind of scheduling arrangements would that entail? And again, I hate to keep harping on it, but it's what all of this comes down to. Would it bump TV package?
Yeah.
David, Jim Phillips is the ACC commissioner. He obviously at times has been under some heat and scrutiny, but he's a guy that's very well respected from what I can tell around the country and obviously within his own conference. How has he reacted to some of this?
We don't know.
Oh, he hasn't said anything, huh?
He has not said a word publicly. I know he has had multiple gatherings of his athletic directors and his presidents. And I had an athletic director tell me the other day that he gives Phillips high marks for how he's comported himself since USC and UCLA announced their intentions to leave for the Big Ten. But best of my knowledge, he has not commented publicly, and surely he will be asked about it a week from Wednesday when he gives his annual State of the Union at the ACC's football kickoff in Charlotte.
Yeah, the Big 12 has theirs. David, we have ours this week covering the Big 12 on Wednesday and Thursday. So some of these things are about to at least open up some mouths, right?
Welcome to the Big 12, Brett Yormark, right?
Yeah. Hey, Brett, congratulations. The very next day, yet another part of the earthquake in college football's landscape, or college athletics landscape for that matter.
Absolutely.
How do schools, in your opinion, David, look at those from the Big 12?
Schools in the ACC?
Yeah, I'm sorry. How do schools in the ACC look at schools in the Big 12?
Oh, I think there's a lot of respect there. I mean, heck, Virginia Tech and West Virginia certainly have a history, and they're going to play on a Thursday night this season in Blacksburg. And last year's game at Mountaineer Field was, essentially a last play game. Terrific entertainment. Those schools go back to pre-Big East even. So there's respect among, they don't interact often and play one another often, but that's just one example. West Virginia Pitt in the backyard brawl. There's another rivalry that's going to be renewed this season.
What do you think if, in fact, one of these two things would happen first? The ACC somehow gets Notre Dame involved, which, of course, most people think because of what they're doing with other sports, but not football, that will never happen in football, or that the ACC is poached?
I think there's probably a greater chance down the road, once we get nearer to the end of this television contract that you referenced earlier that expires in 2035, 36. Then could you see the ACC be poached? Yes. I don't see Notre Dame. There's only two things, guys, that in my mind would drive Notre Dame away from football independence. One, access to the college football playoff. Two, the ability to schedule nationally. If conferences suddenly started playing 10-game league schedules, I'm not saying they're going to, but if they did, how much would that compromise Notre Dame's ability to craft its schedules? And would that, in fact, push the Irish toward conference affiliation?
David, thanks for your time as always. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, guys.
David, again, Teel, Richmond Times-Dispatch with us on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Yeah, his article is really good. It's interesting. It's just a lot of there's so much unknown, right? I mean, it's so much of everything being talked about in realignment is predicated upon something that hasn't even happened yet. And so he does a good job in that article of just kind of taking a look at the ways in which the ACC can kind of close the gap and things that they need to do and that they need to accomplish here, starting, right now, basically, and through media days. Obviously, that'll be very interesting. But, I mean, yeah, what can they do about that TV contract? I don't think any schools are really all that adequately prepared to pay $300 million, give or take a couple bucks, to leave right now and go join the SEC or whatever. You would have to hope that it was basically akin to ESPN intentionally tanking the Big 12 to prop up the Americans so that they got Texas and Oklahoma quickly, which, hasn't been proven in a court of law, but I think we all know that's exactly what was happening, and Bob Bowlesby was dead on when he threatened ESPN because that's absolutely what they were trying to do, if just reading the tea leaves. But, yeah, I don't think ESPN's going to be really all that open to wanting to save them and give them a ton more money and redo this great deal that ESPN's got where they're paying them lowball figures for the next decade plus. He got you on that. I don't think that they're going to be all that keen to change that. So how could they open up those conversations? I don't know. There's just a lot it kind of hinges on something else occurring that hinges on something else that hinges on something else. And right now, like I said earlier, I think everybody's just we're all waiting for everything just kind of break loose all at once. And instead what's happened is everything's slowed down to a crawl almost to the point where now it's all rumors and speculation. But what's actually going on, we really don't even know because the conferences aren't talking at the moment. But with these media days, I don't know how much more we'll learn, but it sure will be interesting to at least have the media have the opportunity with the SEC, with the ACC, with the Big 12, with the Pac-12, et cetera, to get in front of these commissioners and ask some questions and try to get a few more answers, although I think we're still going to be searching for answers long after these media days are over with. But he does have, the right questions when it comes to the ACC and what's kind of in front of them right now. And obviously that TV deal, if somehow they could put some more power into that and make that a little bit more manageable, not only with the limits or the timing of it being as long as it is, but also the money that's coming in, that would be huge for the ACC. But again, can they do that? I mean, probably probably going to be hard to do.
I can't imagine anyone from the ACC right now what the Big 12 has, or even the Pac-10, how you can keep up over time. Yes, you could have a team jump up and win a national title. Yes, you could have teams actually have nice runs of success. But over time, giving up $30, $40, $50 million a year in revenue, it just is going to wear you down.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
And that's why, that's 1/3 of what he said. Somehow get to the table with ESPN and try to figure out a way to further maximize this deal. But I don't know how really you're going to do that at this point. I mean, you're not going to go poach anybody. I mean, the best thing you could have happen basically is grab Notre Dame. But outside of that, what are you going to do to really do that? And then why would ESPN really be all that willing to do that when they're spending gobs and gobs of money elsewhere? And like I said, clearly we're trying to tank another conference to benefit the ones they've already got under their umbrella. So there's that. There's the college football playoff. And when is that going to change, if ever going to change? If somehow they had, as he points out, an automatic bid, then that would ease some feelings, but again, that's not out there right now. And then the third part of it is that he mentioned was the simmering resentment, as he put it, between the ACC members.
I want to get into that.
Okay.
Because part of it as well, Notre Dame's athletic director and others, including Greg Sankey and the SEC, they weren't real thrilled with this alliance. And on top of that, Phillips, who's the commissioner of the ACC, hey, he was doing what everyone else was doing. He was trying to save his own conference's butt, just like whatever Warren was trying to do when he said, hey, let's have this alliance. But one of the things that slowed down the college football expansion, the championship expansion, was Jim Phillips in the ACC. And there are some bitter feelings, some hard feelings there. We're going to hear from Brian Driscoll at 4:30. We'll come back with a couple of other notes in college football here in a moment. We will hear from Brian Driscoll. He covers Notre Dame, about all the questions about what he thinks or what we think or the questions we have for him about Notre Dame. Phillips was the point man to the ACC's objections, observing that college athletics needed to address an array of other issues before moving forward with the college football expansion. Jack Swarbrick had residual anger, according to this article from David Teel. And then obviously Sankey and others were not real thrilled either about how that was just hit a big, massive wall. I'm glad it did, because it could have been like even 10 times worse had it not been slowed down.
What, expansion?
Yeah, the expansion of the championship. The expansion. I'm glad that it was calmed down for a little bit, but they can't. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. I was not happy that the college football playoff expansion was slowed down. I want them to get to that, stick to it, and then move on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why we're undergoing all this right now. That's part of the big reason why. I mean, the money's the biggest reason why, but the lack of the playoff ability, that's everybody's great fear, right? That's why the alliance. Well, the SEC is going to get like half the field if we don't put our foot in the sand. Meanwhile, one of their alliance members is totally going behind their backs and finagling themselves a couple of, potential playoff members. But anyways, I should have asked him what his favorite alliance moment was, but I think he kind of laid it all out there and as well as in the article. But yeah, I mean, the college football playoff plays a massive role in this as well. And, the ACC's got to hope at this point, if everything just stays status quo, that somehow their conference is one of those that gets an automatic qualifier of some sorts, I guess is what you'd have to be hoping for. But yeah, I mean, he lays it out, those three big questions. And as I mentioned, that last one was just kind of the feeling in the room amongst the members. You've got the playoff piece of it. You've got the gap in revenue piece of it, but you've got also now Clemson and North Carolina and potentially Virginia and Virginia Tech, or all these schools that have been mentioned in some sort of realignment scenario. And not all of them are realistic, as we've said before, but there are definitely some realistic takes when you talk about, hey, would the SEC or the Big Ten be interested in North Carolina? Yeah, I think that they would. I think that they would be. Would they be interested in Clemson? Yeah, I think that they would. Would they be interested in FSU and Miami? Yeah, I think they'd at least get a little look over. So there's a real threat there, and how do you convince those who do have an actual option? Forget the playoff and the access there, and forget the revenue gap, but taking those into account as well. I mean, just on the surface, I'm sure there's some hurt feelings right now. I'm sure there's some brands like OU and Texas that feel like, hey, we're kind of carrying the load here, and why do we have to, lose because we're the babysitter, basically. I'm sure there's some of those types of feelings when you look at that revenue gap. So, yeah, it's all very interesting, but trying to keep the band together, that's going to be the hard part initially, I think.
On the part about Texas and OU, it seems to work in the SEC when certain schools are carrying the load there. but they figured that out, that it's okay as long as the weakest link is strong. And that doesn't mean you can't be different. We have a lot of great chat room comments on the text line as well, 254-339-1122. The two helmets, the new ones behind us, the UCF helmet is not the most updated version, but that came into the mailbox for me over the weekend, and also Vanderbilt, the Commodores, behind us as well as we continue, and Jack McKenzie compiles the helmets and puts them up as well. When we come back, we'll read some of your chat comments and any questions you may have. At the bottom of the hour, Brian Driscoll on Notre Dame, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. I mentioned this story last week. I got a text from Dr. Rob Maxey at Ideal MRI in the Central Texas Marketplace in Waco. Wanted to share this story with me and then with you. A lady called Ideal MRI saying that her insurance was making her go to the hospital MRI. It would cost her $1,600 for the knee MRI with insurance already deducted. She called us up, Ideal MRI, was distraught. We told her our price. She was elated. She was relieved. She got her scan last week. Results to her doctors immediately. Her exam was interpreted by a fellowship-trained, world-class musculoskeletal radiologist. And her local doctor was, of course, had access to images online immediately. And not bad for $497. Saved her, the patient, $1,100 with a phone call to Ideal MRI. They're located in Waco in the Central Texas Marketplace, but you can contact it. Might be worth the trip at idealmri.com.
Cars priced right both day and night. At Richard Car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. At Richard Car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. At Richard Car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. At Richard Car in Waco, Texas.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs. Even offering financing if that's needed, everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations. Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Did you know that Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness is a partner of the city of Waco? Did you know that we are open to the public? Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers day passes to the public for only $10 a day, and we offer money-saving memberships. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including bar, yoga, boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. There are free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, elliptical machines, and much more on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training available where you can be encouraged to grow. Sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. 17 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Waco's premier experience where you can help your mind, body, and soul. Visit our website at wacotennis.com. Call us at 254-753-7675 or visit us next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
And interesting fake here. It's a touchdown to Ben Simmons. Just love the poise of this young quarterback.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now, here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
Thank you to those watching us and also participated in the chat room. Also, those on the text line as well. And a couple of other nuggets. I just asked this question during the break here in the studio. You know, we hear about the SEC, and yes, they've won 12 of the last 16 national titles. Alabama, LSU, Auburn. God, I don't want to forget one of them. Georgia, right? Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Georgia. Am I missing somebody? A part of the SEC that's won a national title in the last 16 years. I mentioned Clemson, too, and Florida State won ACC.
Auburn,
Florida?
LSU, Bama, Georgia, and Florida. Yeah.
Florida. Excuse me, because Florida's won a nice chunk. All right. How many teams in the Big Ten? And who was the last? And it's a great conference. This is not trying to like pick and choose. But think about this when it comes to clout. Who was the last team in the Big Ten to win a national championship other than Ohio State? And I think they've won it twice in the last 20 or 25 or so years.
Michigan in 97.
Split it with Nebraska in 97, which also was Nebraska's last national title with Osborne. Clemson's a total 6-2 overall recently against Clemson, 6-2 overall against Ohio State and Alabama. So the ACC's got some moxie. The problem is their how much money they make per year is so low compared to the Big Ten, and it grows. The Big Ten's going to be monstrous, and, of course, in the SEC as well. So the Big Ten is a powerful conference, massive conference, and yet Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, obviously Nebraska's not carried their load at all. Michigan, it's been forever. And really, Ohio State's just had a couple. And so that's something. That doesn't mean they don't have more eyeballs and a huge television revenue and all that. That's not what it means. But it's just something to kind of think about when you look at the power structure in college football.
Yeah, it's not all based on wins all the time.
Nope.
It's based on, hey, how fortunate you are. Your school's massive, and you have huge amounts of alumni. Other schools don't, and they're at a disadvantage. I mean, that's other schools that are better athletically with better championships and better programs in the last 50 years. They're never going to compete with, your 100 years of having, thousands of alumni graduating every year. It's just not going to, like, Baylor's never going to be as big as Michigan, ever, ever, ever. They could probably win, ultimately if you start now and then let's see who has as many championships overall in 15 years. I think they could probably go toe-to-toe prior to now. It's going to be a lot harder. If it was more of the way it's been, then yeah, I would take Baylor in that bet that they could pretty much go toe-to-toe with a Michigan, despite the inherent advantages that a Michigan has. But that's this landscape that's changing now, because the gap is going to be so wide that no matter culturally how good or whatever you are, it's hard to compete in an NIL era when another school is making $100 million more than you are, and they can just simply spend that on recruits.
Yeah,
that's the part about it, is that You can say it's not that it's undeserved. You're worth whatever somebody's going to pay you. It's not about conference trash talk or anything like that. The concern is no matter what you do culturally or coaching-wise or the recruits that you find first or whatever, that ultimately the big boy with the big checkbook's going to roll into town, and no matter what Dave Aranda or Joey McGuire or whatever said to you in the bond they built with your parents, if Steve Sarkisian or, and I'm not trying to, that name popped into my head, but somebody from the Big Ten or whatever comes rolling in, and they've got a big checkbook with a bunch of zeros they can add onto that. That's what you're competing with. And
not
you
the
can
school, but the NIL programs, right? Yes, I know.
Yeah,
what you're
sure.
saying.
The NIL programs that have nothing to do with the school.
Yeah.
Yes, those people. But yeah, I mean, that's the frustrating, I think, scary part for fans out there is that you could, not that everything was squeaky clean by any means, but you could, just based on culture and location and things like that, win your fair share of battles. And maybe that's still going to be the case, but I do think there is that alarmist sort of mentality that no matter what you do, no matter what kind of culture you build or what kind of coach you have or what kind of whatever, it's going to be hard for some recruits to turn down just these massive checks that could be coming their way. And with more money going to two conferences specifically and that gap being as broad as it is, if you're making $120 million or $100 million more than the school that you're recruiting against, I'm going to take the school that's making $100 million more.
30, 40, 50 million a year.
Exactly.
But we've seen until NIL's now taken over, and we'll see what the ramifications are with that. And if teams that spend it the most will actually succeed. We have seen schools that have the biggest budgets not win recently.
Sure.
And others who have just a better culture or better fits or whatever have been able to do that. Matthew brought this up. I'll refuse to watch college football if it's down to just two leagues, mainly the Big Ten and SEC. I've heard that. I don't know if I've even thought about that. I love watching important stuff, important sports events. But there is a little bit of that.
It would depend for me.
A little bit of that.
It would depend on me. What are the details? Like, is the Big 12, is the ACC, is the Pac-12, whatever that's going to look like, or whatever the Big 12 is going to look like? How many of these other schools that we know aren't on the in-club, how many of them are still involved? Because if it's this, some people want to go full-on apocalyptic, and it's only 40 teams and two conferences, and those are the only ones, and they're going to have their own playoff and all of that. I mean, we haven't seen that come to fruition, and it's probably not coming to fruition real soon. But if that were to be the case, and that doomsday scenario for, 40 other schools out there, way more than that, whether or not they ever have a legit chance or anything. Again, we've talked about it. It's just the hope that you thrive on. It's just hey, it's a new season. We got a new quarterback. We got some offensive linemen in the transfer portal. Let's go Mountaineers, But if West Virginia is in this conference that has no invitation at all to whatever this playoff is, then yeah, I think you are going to lose a lot of fans, and that's why I don't think it's going to turn out that way. Because I think you would lose a massive amount of fans, and I'm as big of a college football fan, I'd like to think, as pretty much anybody out there. I mean, I know there's probably others that are far deeper than I am and think about it far more than I do, but I'm a pretty big college football fan. Like, I know where I'm going to be on Saturdays in the fall, and it's going to be in front of the TV or at a game, and it's not going to be limited to just one conference or one team. I'm going to watch as much as I can all the way until Pac-12 After Dark ends, even if that's like Oregon State and Wazoo. I'll watch it because I'm a sicko like that. But if you started to narrow it down to where it was basically this Blue Bloods club of two conferences, like the AFC, NFC thing, I know a lot of people say that would be great and that would be awesome and all the matchups. I will lose so much interest so fast. I'm telling you right now, I would love it for about 2 weeks, and then I would realize how many people are just left out in the cold, and that would kill it for me. I mean, it really would. So I know that I'm not alone in that. I know that whoever I'm joined by might not be a big enough group to make a dent or change things, but that's where I am. I know that's how I would feel.
Imagine if you are one of those teams right now that's not considered a blue blood. It's pretty good right now. Imagine if you're Utah or you're Oklahoma State. But you may not have a chance to win the national title because you're not Rutgers, because of what they bring to the table for the Big Ten. We do need to take a break. Brian Driscoll, who covers Notre Dame, will join us next. Interested to see what's going on with him. I said I would read a couple of chat messages, and I'll do that. That was one from Owen. Why do cross-conference rivalries have to die? Why can't they schedule as a non-conference game every other year? Some continue on. But some, it just got to the point people's feelings were hurt, and I understand why, and they said, no, we're done with you. I hate the fact that Baylor and A&M won't play, or maybe not again, Baylor and Texas, but those schools have to want to play as well, and I'm not so sure if Baylor would want to continue that if, in fact, we get to what appears to happen here in the next couple of years.
And I'm not trying to be doomsday guy, but you're asking, like, how much interest would you have? And I'm just telling you from my point of view, I'd lose a lot of interest if suddenly half the schools didn't matter anymore. But I had to somehow care about Vanderbilt. Like, are you kidding me? No, I'm not. I don't care about Purdue enough to make me cling on to these 40 schools that are remaining. But I also think that that's just doomsday scenario. I don't think there's too many people that really think that would be good for anybody, including those two conferences.
I don't think it's going to get to that point.
I don't either. I don't. As of right now, I don't.
I think there'll be enough pushback. I just feel like there'll be enough pushback. That's not trying to be naive. That's not trying to say, let's keep the history and past. It's not that. I just can't see that happening. But we, again, if there's 8 teams or 12 teams, the majority, we know where they're going to come from, and that's fine. Hope sells tickets. Yeah. Hope keeps donors and alums involved. Hope is why you get the magazines or whatever it is in July and August as your team is about to prepare for another season. Hope is what gave Iowa State what they had the last 3 or 4 years, and that fan base is loyal no matter what. Hope is if you have a chance. And we got to make sure, at least I hope, that never does die. We'll see. When we come back, Brian Driscoll, all sorts of course, thoughts and speculation. What does Notre Dame want to do? I don't think they'll ever stop being an independent until the day that they're told you cannot compete for a national championship in football unless you join a conference. And I don't think it'll ever get to that point. He's next on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store with a butcher shop and bakery inside. It is a phenomenal place. We saw the video, I guess it was on Friday. We showed Blake Blackmar, the former Baylor offensive lineman. That was Thursday. 100 bone-in ribeye steaks that he cooked for the football team, and also help as well from Guest Barbecue for having all the grills available so they could charcoal the steaks correctly. 100 bone-in ribeyes from Waco Custom Marketplace for the football team. Blake's a former player. It was a hell of a deal. And that's where I get my steaks. That's where I get what I want. And I love bone-in ribeyes. I had one, in fact, Saturday evening, 1.5 inches thick. And you just kind of want to cook it the way you want, season it the way you want, and you can have your steaks cut, customized by Waco Custom Marketplace. Again, a butcher shop and bakery. Bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches every single morning. And they also have what else you need, the knickknacks, the snacks, the seasonings, and much more if you need that as well inside their store. It's 425 Lake Erie Drive in Waco, Waco Custom Marketplace at wacocustommarketplace.com. Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. State Fair tornado fries, nachos, and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Baylor University is where lights shine bright. So, let there be light. Let there be roommates and teammates, scholarship and championships. Let there be fresh starts and new traditions, fast friendships and lasting impacts. Let there be laughter. Let there be joy. Let there be light. Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, family-owned and operated must-visit pizza place in Waco. Fantastic pizza by the slice or get the whole pie to share. Great happy hour specials every single day, and it's not just pizza. Great wings. You have to try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries, pizza pillows, and more. Dine in for a great hangout or carry-out. Order online at shortyspizzashack.com or do yourself a favor and bring your crew to the restaurant at 12th and Bagby. Shorty's Pizza Shack. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543. Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jeweler, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive. It's a staple of the Waco economy. What are some of the things you have coming up?
You know, we kind of call ourselves the wedding ring store. We do all of our own custom work in-house. I've got 2 expert jewelers on staff every day. We can make anything from scratch. We kind of pride ourselves. Probably 9 out of 10, every engagement ring we do is actually made custom to what the customer wants.
People look at that, oh my God, I can't afford it. I can't afford something like that. You've shown me examples that you can fit pretty much any budget.
It doesn't cost any more to custom make something. You still have gold, you still have diamonds, and you still have labor. Best thing about a custom piece is if you have any old jewelry or heirloom jewelry or something passed down from a grandma or somebody, we can take that jewelry and use it towards your wedding ring for the sentimental value, and then you've got the product, and then it's just a little bit of labor and a little bit of design on your part of what you actually want.
You want to know why they're successful? Brad Boozer, the owner of Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air in Waco.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Sikkim 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
We have had Brian Driscoll on before, and I remember, and we've had others that cover Notre Dame, but I do remember when Michael Campbell, who's on our text line a lot, Michael loves Notre Dame sports, especially football, said, hey, check out Brian Driscoll with Irish Breakdown. In fact, he joins us again now on Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. Brian, thank you, man. I want to start, before we get into the Notre Dame and the conferences and all that, where are they when it comes to their quarterback for the class of 2023? I don't think they have a commitment. Is there anyone on the horizon for that class right now?
Well, they're starting over from scratch to a degree. You know, they kind of put all their eggs in the Dante Moore basket. Things didn't work out. They got a big-time 2024 commit. That kind of shook things up a little bit. So with Dante committing to Oregon, they're going after some other guys. There's a kid from Texas on their board from Dripping Springs, Austin Novosad, who was committed to Baylor. They're reaching out to him. There's a couple other kids, Kenny Minchie from Tennessee, Brock Glenn from Tennessee. So they're just trying to get their foot in the door with a couple kids and see if they can find somebody and flip somebody now that Dante Moore's going somewhere else.
Brian, you keep those Irish out of the Dripping Springs, Texas area. That's a Baylor committee.
Yeah, Austin Novosad's off limits, Brian.
Yeah,
I don't know if they get the
look, I'm sorry, guys. Texas is becoming fertile Notre Dame ground. You got Braylon James.
Yep.
You got Peyton Bowen, you know. Trying to get Jaden Greathouse to think might happen on Friday. So, you know, it's a great state. What you guys got to learn to share a little bit.
Well, I think Texas shares more than any state ever. But in all seriousness, it's interesting because he's been committed to Baylor for a long time. A&M is very much hot and heavy. His parents went there. Obviously, there's the Ohio State factor, and now there's a big boy in Notre Dame also knocking at the door, or perhaps about to knock at the door. All right. Will Notre Dame ever not be independent?
Could there be a day? Sure. Yeah, there could be a day where Notre Dame would not be independent. I think the thing that a lot of people don't quite understand is Notre Dame, they operate on a completely different universe than other people, just how they spend money, how they budget, all these different things. They're just not a program that needs to chase that max dollar deal for TV. And as long as they still have an independent, deal with a network, and as long as they have a path to a national championship, Notre Dame's goal and objective is always going to be independent. And the only conference that I think would make sense geographically is one that really there's a little bit of bad blood there because of the fact that Notre Dame wanted to be in the Big Ten back when they were the Western Conference, and due to some anti-Catholic bigotry and other things, mainly at Michigan, that they were kept out. Now that they're a powerhouse, you want us in now, right? So, and then the other conference that it makes sense, academically in the current league they're in, the ACC, we don't know how long they're going to last. So there's a lot of things up in the air, but Notre Dame is going to do everything it can for as long as it can to remain independent. And I don't think anything that's happening right now is something that's going to force them to change that.
So you don't buy the, look, it's social media, so it is what it is. I mean, it's believe whatever you want to believe, and everybody's got a voice, so it complicates things. But there's no feeling of, if they don't do this, they're going to lose out on massive amounts of money that aren't comparable to what they could get otherwise. Or you don't buy into they're going to be blocked out of the playoff, or any of the multitude of reasons that I've seen for why Notre Dame feels, in the eyes of anonymous people, like they have to, now's the time. You don't see any of that.
I don't. I think the only thing that could happen there is if there was the path to the playoff was changed. And I just, there's no legitimate talk of that happening. It's all, it's honestly coming from the same people that said Notre Dame is going to get left without a schedule in 2020 because they're not in the conference, right? Those same people are saying the same thing, and no one's going to let them join a conference for only a year and leave, right? Sure, ACC did that, and they had their best revenue year ever, despite not having people in the stands and all that. Because why? Because they had Notre Dame. So, I mean, like it or not, I'm not trying to be arrogant. That's just facts, right? But the thing that people have to understand is, and I think this is what is often missed, is people just kind of look at it as, well, so-and-so is offering X amount of dollars, and Notre Dame only makes 26 on their current deal. Well, that's true, but Notre Dame is in a position right now where in the next 3 years, their apparel deal with Under Armour and their TV deal with NBC are all going to expire, which means in the next 3 years, Notre Dame is in a negotiating position to add a big new deal with they signed a $90 million deal in 2014. Those deals are over $200 million now. And then also with NBC, CBS is now without football, right? Because they don't have the SEC anymore. Fox is trying to make big moves. I've heard from my sources that Fox has reached out to Notre Dame about possibly coming over to Fox. And, of course, NBC is going to either be, pony up to get Notre Dame or move on. And the thing that about Notre Dame is they don't need the $90 million. Notre Dame, they're going to get a big payday. The way that they operate, the way they do budgets, the revenue that they can produce in the school because of their independence far outweighs just the simple dollar amount of the TV contract. And, this is an institution with a $20 billion endowment, despite the fact that it's a school that only has about 8,000 undergraduate students. Notre Dame is just a different universe than most of the other big-time powerhouses, which are more often than not public schools.
Brian, there has, I believe, been a time or two when Notre Dame not being a part of a conference could have cost them being a part of the college football playoff. If that ever starts to happen consistently, and I know that consistently it's only one a year, would that then flip the switch?
Perhaps, but I don't think that's been the case. I think, look, in 2015, Notre Dame jumped into the top four despite having an early season loss to Clemson. They fell out because they played like garbage against Boston College and Wake Forest and then lost to Stanford, gave them their second loss. In 2017, Notre Dame lost at home to Georgia, climbed all the way up to number 3 in the rankings, and they fell out because they lost to Miami and lost to Stanford. If they win those games, they're in. And then, of course, this past year, Notre Dame still almost got in, but the reason they didn't get in this year is because they didn't deserve to be in. They went 11-1, but they didn't beat a single team that finished the year ranked in the top 25. So they didn't deserve to be in the top 25 this year. And so that, if they'd have beat Cincinnati but maybe lost to, let's say, Florida State in the opener in overtime, and then, run the table, beat a top 5 Cincinnati, they're 11-1 in that case, maybe they'd have had a better resume. But they didn't deserve to be in last year. I don't think it had anything to do with the conference. They didn't have a resume, and they weren't a good enough team. If they were in a conference and gone and played in the Big Ten championship, they'd have got their butts kicked by Michigan probably, because they just weren't a good team last year. They were a talented team, but they weren't a good team. And, they didn't deserve to be in. So I've pushed back against this. There's no evidence to me that if Notre Dame is a legitimate good team with a resume like they've had in 15 and 17 and other years, if they're a one-loss team, I think they'll get in. And the one year that they did get in with a loss, people said, well, that's because you joined a conference. Well, my counter is, well, if they weren't in a conference, they wouldn't even have had a loss because their only loss was in the conference championship game, which they wouldn't have played if they were an independent.
Brian, when people fantasy book Notre Dame into a conference, if you were to do that, what would be some potential benefits that they don't already experience being an independent?
Well, I think I'm going to have a hard time coming up with those.
Right.
Because they are in a conference. This is what a lot of people think. Like, they're in a conference. They're just not in a conference for football.
Right.
They're in a conference for all the other sports. And so it's really about football. And, I think the only thing that would maybe be a benefit is if they joined a conference, you could maybe establish some new rivalries if they joined the SEC, or form some kind of alliance with other conferences and reestablish some old rivalries if they joined the Big Ten. But honestly, I think Notre Dame loses its brand power as a conference. Look at Penn State. Penn State went from being a national power as an independent to just a regional Big Ten team.
Yep.
And I think that hurts Notre Dame. And so I think if they were to join a conference, it would be the ACC. But right now, the ACC isn't strong enough for Notre Dame to join, nor do I think Notre Dame could necessarily save the ACC because they have such a bad TV deal that still has over 10 years on it. So I honestly, I'm trying to be as honest as possible for what Notre Dame wants to accomplish. I just don't see what playing in a conference does for them, other than the perception of it gives them a better path to the playoff, which I just don't think exists.
I love, and again, I'm going to sound old here because I am, but when Florida State was independent, Miami, Arizona State, Penn State, Notre Dame, and I'm missing some. Brigham Young.
Well, in 1988, the last time Notre Dame won a national title, the number 1, 2, 4, and 5 ranked teams in the country were all independents, because it was Notre Dame and Miami were 1, 2. They were both independent. I think Florida State finished 4th, and then they were independent, and then West Virginia finished 5th. They were independent. The only team I believe that year to finish in the top 5 that wasn't an independent was Michigan. So, up until that, and then the next couple of years, you saw Penn State jump to the Big Ten, you saw Miami jump to the Big East, you saw Florida State jump to the ACC, all for TV money. But a lot of younger people forget that. I've had younger people say this, well, Notre Dame thinks they're special. Well, Notre Dame was used to be in the biggest conference of all, the independent area, where most of the biggest amount of teams were. It's the other teams that left to chase the almighty dollar, not Notre Dame. And, they do it for greed. Well, no, if they were greedy, they would have joined the big league way before and gotten a bigger TV deal. Notre Dame has stayed the same. It's the other people that decided to leave the independent, ability and go somewhere else because they couldn't stay independent. Notre Dame could. So why should they be punished for that?
How much do they get a year from NBC and their TV deal?
It's a little over 15 from NBC, and it's a little over 10 for ESPN because of being in the ACC. So they're about $26 million a year right now.
So that's less per year. And again, there's other avenues of revenue, as you mentioned, but that's less per year than any of the other Power 5 conferences and what they distribute.
Correct.
Yeah. You said you don't even know if they joined the ACC, if that could save the ACC because of their television deal. If in fact...
Yeah, because...
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
go ahead.
You go ahead.
Finish your question. I thought you were done. My apologies.
No, that's fine. If in fact they could join the Big Ten or the ACC, I would think 95% of everybody would think they would join the Big Ten. Is that the wrong number?
I think so, yeah, because I think a lot of people are looking at it from a geographic standpoint. And there's more traditional rivals in the Big Ten. But number one, we had a 4-piece article about this about a year ago about why Notre Dame isn't in the Big Ten, even though Notre Dame wanted to be in the Big Ten twice. But you got to think about this. Except for Northwestern, all the Big Ten schools are big, giant public schools that are more research-oriented in their and their academic emphasis, right? The ACC has public schools, but it's public schools like Virginia, which is small. It's more liberal arts oriented. It's a high academic institution. They call it the Ivy League, the Virginia Ivy, public Ivy type of thing. One of the best public schools. You look at like a school like North Carolina. You look at schools like Wake Forest, which are private schools. Duke's a private school. North Carolina is not, but Duke's a private school. Wake Forest is a private school. There's more private schools in the ACC. The public schools even are much smaller than you see in the Big Ten. And it's a geographic area that's a lot more important. And Notre Dame doesn't need to be in the Big Ten because they already have that region, right? They're already a power in that region. You take them away from that, and you take away their ability to play all over the country, and Notre Dame stops being Notre Dame. And I just think that there isn't a lot into it except for geographically, your travel's closer. But in this era where the world is opening up to us because of streaming and travel and all this other kind of stuff, you're not going to reduce yourself to being a Midwestern school in a Midwestern conference. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Brian, do you feel like Notre Dame officials even feel the need to have to come out at any point and go like, hey, look, we're staying independent, or are they just going to keep on going about their business, I guess, and ultimately somebody asks them if they're going to ever make a move and they just, no, we're still independent? Like, is it even at that much on their radar that they will feel the need to announce anything?
Well, I think it's in their best interest to kind of make people think they're out there, right? Like, so if you're trying to attract the really hot girl, right, but you're not sure if she likes you, which for Notre Dame is the max TV deal and the max, you want to keep those other girls kind of on the, still thinking you're available, right?
Right.
And then if that one says no, then you have somewhere to go. To be a little crude with that analysis, but there's no reason for Notre Dame to join the league right now. There's no reason for Notre Dame to come out and say definitively, nope, stop calling us.
Right.
Because this is about business, right? Why would you come out and say, well, there's no way we join the Big Ten when you're trying to get a TV deal? Someone say, CBS, if you don't want to give us big money to get back college football, that's fine. We'll just go join the Big Ten, right, and get $100 million. So it would be silly to kind of give away your bargaining chips in this negotiation with the apparel companies and the TV deals because, like I said, by the end of 2025, which is 3 years away, Notre Dame will have negotiated a new apparel deal and a new TV deal, which is going to bring in a huge influx of cash. You want to keep yourself sort of a player on that market until those deals are signed.
What do you think about the Big Ten and now going out to the West Coast with UCLA and USC?
I despise the Big Ten for so many different reasons. And that was before this, but like it's been such a dumb league for so long. You call yourself the Big Ten, but yet you haven't had 10 schools in your league since 1990. Now you're going out to get 16 teams. You're going out to get it's like all the tradition that supposedly made this game great, you're just shattering. And I thought the Big Ten had a chance to kind of stand as a leader in this college football movement as the SEC tries to do what they do. The Big Ten could have set up and said, hey, we're going to form this quote unquote alliance with the Pac-12, the Big 12, the ACC, and we're going to stem this tide of the mega conference. Well, for the Big Ten, it was more of like a, hey, come into our house, sit down, get comfortable so we can rob you. That's essentially what they did. And I have zero respect for that. I have zero lack of leadership. It's all a money grab. It's just another one of the million reasons why I just despise the Big Ten.
Kevin Warren just stabbed the Pac-12 right in the back, and everybody's applauding him for it. Yeah.
And I don't feel super terrible for the Pac-12 because you started this when you tried to get Texas and Oklahoma. You started this. But to bring them in as an alliance and the whole way, you're like, we're going to destroy you by taking your only big TV market that anyone cares about it's such a Big Ten move. I mean, it really is. And it's just reason 500,074 that I absolutely hate the Big Ten and everything it stands for.
Well, I'll tell you this: we have a chat room that it's almost like a heart that beats on its own, and sometimes it's after it's like snorted cocaine the way it is. There are some Big Ten fans that want a little piece of you, Brian. I'm telling you right now. I appreciate it. No, and everyone has an opinion.
Big Ten fans don't like something someone from Notre Dame had to say. I am floored, just floored that that's the reality.
Hey, man, thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate the insight.
Hey, Brian, I got to ask real quick. I mean, new baseball coach, but also Notre Dame right there jockeying for number one in the rankings. Marcus Freeman continuing to do his thing. It just seems like things are going really good right now for Freeman and company, and also the big news in baseball.
It's fun to be a Notre Dame baseball fan for up until now. Now it's kind of like that scene from Waterboy, like, we suck again, they took all the coaches. So, but hopefully it goes well. Coach Stifler has a great resume, and the football team's red hot. So, yeah, it's a fun time to be covering Notre Dame. There's no question about that.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate your opinion. Brian Driscoll, Irish Breakdown with us. That's great segment. When some of you don't like it, but that's good. We want to make you think.
I mean, whether you like it or not, that's up to the individual. But I mean, I like that he said what he said, and I like that he made a lot of sense in saying what he said. Depending on who you go and look at, there's thoughts of Notre Dame, has to feel like they're on some kind of a deadline. That's why I asked him about the question about are they in any hurry to have to say anything? And as he points out, absolutely not. They could never say anything and just let people speculate for the next 10 years about where they're going to be and just rake in all of the money in the meantime. I'm glad that we could ask some questions. The thought of, they feel left out because these schools are not, all their rivals are in the Big Ten. Well, I mean, he just shot that down. They can play whoever they want to as an independent. Now, what would be interesting is if the Big Ten somehow had some sort of a scheduling policy and all of a sudden Notre Dame wasn't allowed to play USC, and maybe the next time we talk to him, we can ask him that question. But outside of that, I mean, I think he pretty much shot holes through every theory that people have thrown out there as to why Notre Dame would feel the necessity to go and join a conference right now. He gave a lot more reasons for why it makes no sense for them to do anything different versus go and basically become, eye to eye with Ohio State and Michigan and all of these teams who right now they have an advantage over and will continue to as long as they want. NBC's never going to want Notre Dame. TV networks are never not going to want Notre Dame. So the way he lays it out there, I mean, it just seems crystal clear to me of what benefit is there? So that you're just in the club with everybody else, and now all of a sudden you're lowering yourself, if anything, versus the position you're in right now where your chair is always going to be a couple feet higher than everybody else's.
Well, one thing is for sure, you're right. They can do whatever they want to do if in fact it gets to a point where they start to lose what they love, which is that ability to play people throughout the country and then also, of course, have a chance to play for a national championship, which has only happened since 1988. They've been in the race a few times, but not very often. The USC thing about playing, someone put that up in the chat room or even Brian mentioned that. There's no way USC would agree with that, to not play Notre Dame. Although, if Nebraska, Oklahoma, which ran college football for 25 or 30 years, not the only rivalry, but one of the absolute best elite rivalries, deciding national championships can disappear, then any rivalry can disappear, as Texas and A&M.
Yeah, I was going to say, ask the Aggies and Longhorns. We haven't seen that in, 10-plus years? Yeah, I mean, anything can happen, but I enjoy getting his perspective because, it's good to have different perspectives. You can find yourself just in a tunnel with the same regurgitating opinion and convince yourself that, Notre Dame's, they're on the cusp of having to join because la-di-da-di-da, they're going to get left out and they're not going to make as much money and they're not going to blah, blah, blah. They're not going to play USC or whatever the case may be. And again, as he laid out, they have no reason to do absolutely anything right now. They can just sit there and watch the craziness and watch themselves be at the forefront of it without even having to so much as say a word. And I'm sure they're enjoying that immensely right now in South Bend.
I, for one, enjoy their schedule, not every year, but there is a flavor to it. This year, guess what? They open up at Ohio State.
Nice.
So they do have Brigham Young, which has been on and off. They have Stanford, who they play all the time. On top of that, they play Clemson. So there are some years based on how the schedule falls where you're like, who have they played? Like he mentioned, they have to beat some of those teams. And then, of course, there's USC under Lincoln Riley, who is yet to be determined who they will be this year.
They could join the new Big Ten with the two LA schools included and have a worse schedule.
No, yeah, absolutely right.
So, again, that shouldn't be an outright reason of, we're not going to be able to have the same. No, your schedule without being in the Big Ten is probably better than it would be in the Big Ten. Based on the teams that you mentioned. And I'm sure you could load it up, but they already play most of the teams that you would load them up with in the Big Ten. They already play Ohio State. They already play USC. They already play Michigan. They're kind of already playing it, but also getting the benefits of being able to go outside of it. So again, I don't see the rush for them. I don't see the urgency that oh my God, we better go save the ACC. Oh my God, we better go join Ohio State and Michigan. I don't see that either, and he laid it all out.
One of the things that I see from fan bases that, certain conferences, you want what's best for your program, and I get it. So do I. And mine is not very good. They're irrelevant in Nebraska. But when somebody else says they want what's best, or a school basically can say they want what's best for their program, well, they don't. It's so fun. I love the passion, the anger at times, and also the fact college football is just so amazing. We've never seen anything like it, like we do now. This is Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. And right now they've got the summer event going on, the Ram Truck Make the Switch sales event. Alan Samuels, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco. 2022 Ram 1500 Crew Cab, the Lone Star Edition, with special values up to $7,000 or get $1,500 in bonus cash and 2.9% for 72 months. Ram trucks designed to be durable, functional, stylish. Man, the way pickup trucks are made now on the inside, in the cab, it's like driving a luxury SUV. Legendary, award-winning truck, back-to-back-to-back Motor Trend Truck of the Year, the Ram Truck, at Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Tell Ted Teague I sent you. Say hi to AJ, one of the great guys that can handle you, the client, for a new vehicle. Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Sausage wrap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
It's summertime. There's picnics, reunions, cookouts, and so much to do. And Waco Custom Marketplace on Lake Air Drive in Waco is your home for the butcher shop that can help you with beef, pork, poultry, and seafood. They are spectacular at being able to deliver you whatever cut of steak you want. Bone-in ribeye, however thick you want it, that's great. They'll do it. Sirloin, T-bone, porterhouse, bacon wrap filet. And of course, as I mentioned, they have pork, poultry, and seafood. Their Norwegian salmon is spectacular. Also, all of the sauces and seasonings you'll ever need, all the ingredients you'll ever need to make sure you have that perfect, flawless taste. So it's delicious whenever you take something off the grill. And a full-fledged bakery as well, with fresh baked bread and kolaches every single day. Up and down the aisle of Waco Custom Marketplace, you also have what you need, from knickknacks to snacks to more, at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, Waco Custom Marketplace.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, behind the bank.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
For those of you joining us in this third hour today, we had some news, personal news here on the show today. Cole Barber and his wife, Sarah, had a young boy over the weekend. And then also, Paul Kettle.
For those who don't know, Cole Barber is...
Oh, he's one of the three partners who made this happen. Sikkim365.com, the umbrella, which also we're under as the radio and YouTube show. He, Brian Etheridge, and Ashley Hodge are the ones that started Sikkim 365. What was it, about 5 or 6 years ago? And then also Paul Catalina, who's normally a part of our show, is in Hawaii. Got engaged yesterday to Amanda. He's gone all week long, and he'll be back sometime. I don't know. He may never come back from Hawaii. Who would? He is also on break, but congratulations to them. RG3 will take over that Monday Countdown show from Randy Moss's spot, and he'll join us here sometime here pretty soon as well. This is from the 801. I've seen this floated out there. We've even discussed this because some conferences at times have had where the elite teams, the ones who bring in probably the most eyeballs or money, have had more money when it's distributed. For a while, the Big 12 did that. It didn't work out well. That's what kind of created a lot of the issues they've dealt with in the last 10 or 12 years. The 801, Brigham Young fan, Quinn. Recently found your show. We appreciate it. It's great. Thank you, Quinn. Since UCLA and USC announced they were leaving the Pac-12, I've read a lot of claims the Big 10, Big 12, needs to act fast and add Pac-12 teams. But do you think there's any way that Oregon or Washington, if they were to ever even consider and or join the Big 12, would get higher money incentives than everyone else in the conference? And I would absolutely lose my S if the Big 12 ever succumbed to that. The only team I would ever do that for might be Notre Dame, but that's not happening, so the answer is no.
I mean, to make it a little clearer, you're saying have bigger shares than the actual Big 12 schools? No, absolutely not. They're not big enough or good enough or bad enough to be worth that. No, absolutely not. They're not that far above teams already in the conference. I know Oregon's the big Nike brand, and I'm sure there will be a number of numbers, graphs or whatever that somebody who doesn't understand that I don't care will throw at me if they take it the wrong way. But Oregon and Washington are not 20 steps above Oklahoma State and Baylor and some of the other schools in the conference, in my opinion. They might be more popular, they might have bigger alumni, but they're not that far ahead where they would be able to carve out bigger shares of the pie. Absolutely not.
All right, now let's go to the text line 254-339-1122.
They would have to both bringing in with them in tow like millions of new Big 12 fans and millions of, and I don't think that they're doing, they might be in theory bringing in millions of new fans, but they would have to have such sizable TV audiences and a share of the popularity of the conference. It's not even realistic to debate it. They don't, and they won't. And so there's no way they get that much money.
If that was the case, they would have been invited by the Big 10.
Exactly, yeah.
From Ron Tamlin. Ron, thank you. No doubt the Blue Bloods, state schools, huge alumni and eyeballs, NIL power will have bigger advantages, but have the Yankees always won World Series titles with all the money that they used to spend? Now, back when free agency first began, I think it was in the 70s when Curt Flood won an antitrust suit, and eventually the Yankees had a couple of teams that they won, were able to kind of put together a free agent type championship. But the run that they made with Derek Jeter and all those guys, that was mainly homegrown or just really, really good trades. Not much of it was the dominant, let's go buy Reggie Jackson or something like that. So it doesn't always work. That's why I have always admired the Tampa Bay Rays in baseball, the Minnesota Twins in baseball.
No, it doesn't always work, and it wouldn't guarantee anything. As we've seen with Texas, for example, they've got more money than God, and they haven't won a title since 2005. Oklahoma's got a really good backing, but they haven't won one since 2000. They played for it. USC, it's been a long time. Tennessee, it's been a long time. You can go down the list of schools. It's been a really long time who all have big money, big tradition, and all of that. That's certainly understandable, but I think there's just such a massive gap. There's not just one Yankees here. There's like 7 or 8 of them, and everybody else is the Rays, basically. I don't think there's a lot of maybe there is some middle ground. There's definitely some middle ground, but to what extent, I don't know. So, yeah, I understand the comparison. I don't have a way right off the top of my head to completely shoot down and shoot that full of holes because it makes sense, but that's the concern, right? That's the concern that people have, whether or not it makes sense or not, is that there will be certain schools who no matter what, no matter how bad their culture actually is or how bad their hires are or how miscalculated their recruiting classes are, which some of these schools have faced all of those problems over the last 10 years, it just never matters because just wipe it all clean in the offseason and go spend on, big prospects and big coaches' contracts and try to just buy it all away. And that doesn't always work, to your point. You're right. But, how much more is that gap, I think, is the big concern.
From the 813, will you guys be okay if Baylor and TCU went to the ACC, Houston and Texas Tech go to the Pac-12? The ACC and Pac-12 come together because of the ACC network. That's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. Love the fact you wanted to contact us and ask us that question, but that kind of got me out. I'm out of whack on that.
Well, I just think it would be a long road to a much shorter road would be if you're going to have those two teams and then two other teams from the same conference join a different conference. Those two conferences merge. Why not just do that from the outset? It seemed like you could probably eliminate a few steps. But to your question, would I be upset if TCU or Baylor or TCU and Baylor join the ACC? No. I'd be upset if they joined the AAC right now. I think that would be a bit of a bummer. But any spot at the, hypothetical table, whether that's in the Big Ten or the Big 12 or the Pac-12 or the SEC or the ACC, I mean, all you want is a chair at this point. When the music stops, all you want to have is a chair. And right now they have a chair, and maybe they got a backup chair. And so long as they have that, I'm going to be happy for those schools. And that goes for anybody. I just hate the thought of schools dropping below a level of where they have been. The thought of that really sucks for schools that have been competing for national titles and been doing a little bit, doing more with less. I think to eliminate them from the equation, no matter what conference you're talking about, would be a bummer. So yeah, I'd be totally fine if they joined the ACC because they're basically staying in a similar spot to where they have been. I don't want to see any team lose the ability to be a part of where they are now. Now we know some drop, and there are some that want to move up. There's now 131 FBS schools in football. There one time was just over 100. So it's growing. It may not be a good time to be growing. The schools that have gotten in or out of FCS, Sam Houston State, one of the rivals for my alma mater, they're moving up. We've seen what UAB's up and down. And others, it's a little bit hard to kind of keep up with me. But here is what – go ahead. I was going to say to the other part of that, as far as losing the rivalries, that would kind of suck because you're losing Texas, you're losing Oklahoma. If you were to suddenly lose Tech and who was the other example, Oklahoma State or something, I think that would be a bummer because – I understand regionality is not important anymore, but I do think it is, and I think we're going to return to a time, maybe not in the so far off future, where we realize, regionality actually was a good thing, and regionality was a lot of why college football made sense and was such a popular sport was because of the regionality of it, and it's almost being disregarded as though it's not important at all in some ways, and I don't know. I think we're going to find ourselves looking in the mirror sooner rather than later going, no, it was important. It didn't drive everything, and it didn't drive, the realignment and all of that, but it should have been probably taken into account a little bit more, given a bit more weight than it has.
Steve Frog fan, no. TCU and Baylor State reap the rewards of future fortunes. Thanks for all of that. I want to go back to, I don't say many things that stick, and especially for me, but I want you to think about this scenario again, that Oklahoma State last year was on the edge, an inch or two away from playing, most likely, in the college football playoff. And they, because of an incredible play, once-in-a-lifetime play by Baylor and Jaron McVay. And that let Baylor have their best season ever. Both of those schools, and you can replace them with anybody else if you want. Can you imagine if it's them or Utah who won the Rose Bowl, right? They lost to Ohio State. They had a hell of a team. They won the Pac-12. Being told you cannot play for the national championship, you don't have a chance to win the national championship, and with all due respect to Rutgers, they do. And I'm not trying to pick on Rutgers. I'm using them as an example. That sucks.
It doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make any sense.
Because they're attached to the Big Ten or whatever the number's going to be. But just think about that scenario. Forget about mentioning Georgia and Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, U.S., but that teams that have done it right, who are building something that wins against other teams that are blue bloods with bigger budgets, would not have a chance to win something because perhaps they're not attached to one of those conferences, and those teams will never win much of anything. I'm not against Rutgers. I'm not against Vanderbilt or anything like that, or Maryland. God bless them. Hell, Maryland, remember, beat Texas a couple of years in a row recently. But I think that scenario right there kind of like, damn. Last week, and I think it was on Friday, we discussed teams that have big stadiums, and are those the teams that usually have the highest attendance? The answer is yes. But I did bring up a scenario of any particular type stadiums that used to be really large that just don't fill up people. And we mentioned Penn. Tony Altimore sent us that graphic. I got a text, a direct message, don't forget about Rice. And, of course, Baylor played Rice recently a couple of times in the last 10 or 12 years. They have a capacity of like 68 or 70,000. They obviously don't have very good attendance. That's about one of the only other examples of a school that plays in a massive stadium, and yet it's a shell. And that's unfortunate. I hate that for Rice. It's an incredible institution. Absolutely a great place for academics. And at times, Tommy Kramer, among some others that were pretty good in football. Now, back to the, let's go to the chat room. Logs down 36. Rutgers would smash Vandy. I don't know that. From T-Duck, Rutgers doesn't care. They're getting $100 million a year. There you go.
That's the thing, is it's all about the money for some of them. I mean, Rutgers realizes their place, and, hey, might as well get a big piece of the pie and a lot of money and all of that. But, yeah, I mean, I think that would suck if you had your Baylors, your Oklahoma States, your TCUs, and I know I'm just using Big 12 schools, but whoever, Utah, Oregon, Washington, everybody that's left over at this point. I mean, here's the thing, too. Is the ACC a part of this theoretical scenario?
Can't imagine they wouldn't be.
I mean, that's the thing about when you start talking about this, is like, okay, then where's the ACC? Or is this in this dream scenario, have North Carolina and Virginia and all of them already jumped over? Like, I need to know what this actually looks like. And that's why you start going so far of like, it's just going to be the AFC and the NFC, and boom, I told you. And it's like, but it doesn't make any sense, though. So, like, where's the ACC in this? Okay, now they're poached. And so then there's, the Wake Forests and the Duke basketballs and those left over, and you mean to tell me they're just not going to be involved at all? Like, I don't buy that. I don't buy that for a second. So I have a hard time imagining that. But, I'm not going to say it's not entirely possible because, after all, it's not even so much the schools making the decisions. It's the TV networks very clearly that are making the decisions. So if the TV networks were to come out and say, hey, Big Ten and SEC will give you $3 billion, because why the hell not? To have your own playoff, then I'm sure they would say yes. But you know what? I'm going to have an asterisk next to that bad boy, whoever emerges from that, because they didn't play the rest of the country. So, I mean, it could happen, but I'm just not really fearful of it right now. I think everything's about to kind of calm down a little bit with the season upon us, and that's not to say there won't be some big surprise or two that could still be on the horizon, but I think everybody's about to start locking in on football season.
DT, thank you, Craig, in the chat room. Take it further, guys. Northwestern would get to compete for a national championship because they joined the right conference 100 years ago, but Stanford didn't.
Yeah.
It's great.
Sorry.
Really good.
Sorry, Matt Campbell and Iowa State, that you won, all your games. You don't get a shot, but Northwestern does. Yeah, I mean, I know that's a fictional scenario as well, but that's something that could potentially happen. I mean, there's a lot of great teams, great coaches, great players that you're just telling from the outset you have no shot at, the ultimate prize. I don't know how that flies with the majority of college football fans out there. Even some of those who have their teams on the inside, I think that they would probably see something wrong with that if you're really looking at it objectively. So, again, it's the TV networks that are driving it, so they don't care about schools that don't draw them big numbers. So I'm sure that they would not have any problem with it being that way. But I do think the college football world there would be a bit of a backlash, no doubt about it.
From the 785, my old cattle buyer, tremendously successful, used to say, make it the best thing that ever happened to you. When you face a bad deal, Texas and Oklahoma leaving is the best thing that ever happened, according to the 785, to everybody who's left in the Big 12. And there is that thought. There is that thought. Yes,
I got
financially,
railed,
maybe not, but
I got railed by, or I don't know how bad it actually was in terms of the trash talk, and I didn't click on the link and give them a hit, but there was some Texas site that took one of our conversations and took a smidgen of what I was talking about and said, 365 Sports says the Big 12's better without Texas and Oklahoma. Just garbage clickbait, but regardless, that's not exactly what was said. I did say, however, that I think, in terms of relationships and holding meetings and looking each other in the eye and feeling like you're not being lied to and not having a room where 8 to 10 people all feel like they're on the same page and camaraderie is great, and the other 2 are secretly over in the corner saying, we're better than all of you, you are scum, you're nothing compared to us, and we're going to leave you the first one we get. I do think eliminating that does make for a more positive Big 12 conference that can work together on a better case-by-case basis and just overall. And I do think that ultimately could lead to, when you're not having to worry about those 2 or that one school in particular that's causing you problems every time you try to finagle a new TV deal or whatever the case may be, I think eliminating some of that toxicity will make it a better operating conference under Brett Yormark. And that's all my point was you eliminate the 2 who feel that it's like if you're going out and you have 2 people that are in the group that are constantly with their nose down or their nose up in the air and telling you how much better they are than you are and how much more money they have and how much more how cars and homes they have and blah, blah, blah and going on. Is that going to be the most fun dinner? Yeah. Are you going to want to do that year after year after year? Or if you eliminate those 2 toxic people.
Go to dinner and let somebody talk about themselves the entire time.
Or if you eliminate that person and everybody else goes to dinner and you just have a great time. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is no, the money's going to go down. The TV talk is going to go down because even when those 2 teams weren't at their best, they were still talked about more than the teams that were at their best. And that's never going to change because they're the 2 big market teams. But in terms of operating on a functional level and people getting along and actually it not being this weird dynamic of those 2 versus everybody and this feeling that they're carrying you, yeah, the Big 12 is going to be way better. And that was what the headline did not entail.
The Donatello Network, Rutgers has a road win in the ACC in the last 10 years. Nobody can say that in the Big Ten East. Stop. I love this chat room. You guys just crack me the hell up. Also, from GL Cannon. But if Notre Dame comes knocking, just name any conference and they would say, come aboard. We'd love your ratings and money.
Sure.
There's a pretty good chance. I would think that I can't imagine someone telling them no.
Well, I mean, it would depend. What are they asking for? I mean, are they just join
equal footing?
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, considering that you're bringing in like 3 times as much as some people are bringing in, you want equal shares? Okay, sure. You're boosting our product through the roof, and you just want equal shares. So basically, not Oklahoma and Texas, who did not want to be so equal, right? Is what you're saying? Yeah, you would take Notre Dame and absolutely without even thinking about it at all. Now the question is, if they came in and said, "We'll join your conference, but we want 80% of the money." Or we want this much more than everybody, that's where it's complicated. Like on the surface, just equally, Notre Dame wants to join, everybody is saying yes because their brands are automatically going up, their ratings are going up, their money's going up. But Notre Dame wouldn't do that. Why would they do that? We just had this conversation. They wouldn't even do that for the Big Ten and all that big money that's going there. Why would they do that for the Pac-12 or the ACC or the Big 12? It'd be a great scenario if Notre Dame just called up Brett Yormark and said, hey, we don't want anything extra, even though we're going to have clearly the largest piece of the pie being brought in. We just want to join you guys. You would do that, no problem whatsoever, and smile all the way to the bank.
All right, when we come back, we mainly and a lot of times cover college football, of course, throughout the country, the Big 12, Baylor Core as well. But I hope you've been able to understand what we try to do. We bring segments that also are around the country, and that's why we appreciate a lot of your input. We have high school football we cover, which, of course, comes up and starts in September, actually late August here in the state of Texas. Cowboys on occasion. Some of you don't really care much about the pro football or the NBA. That's fine, too, but we're going to still on occasion have those segments. But coming up, Brad Sham is the voice of the Cowboys, and we will not mention maybe one thing about Dak Prescott or anything to do with the football team or the franchise. Over the weekend, someone who was beloved, an engineer who helped everybody, including us on occasion, passed away suddenly at the age of 56. His name is Ted Nichols-Payne. And the voice of the Cowboys, Brad Sham, put something up on Twitter that made me think for a second, and it probably is something you need to hear as well. And he's next on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be. If you have had any of these symptoms, 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. 1, and you hear it and you see all the commercials all the time, is ED or your sex drive is not the same. It happens. 2 is your energy's down. 3, and that could be combination with 1. And 3 is your sleep habits are just out of whack. And maybe even 4, you put on a little bit of too much weight. That could be your diet, but it also could be your testosterone level is too low. 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues, and Dr. Kent Petty can help you at pettycliniclowt.com. In the top left corner of their website, there's a phone number and an email. Contact them, tell them I sent you, and see if you can get in, and he will set you up, the staff will set you up to go to a lab to get your blood drawn, and he will look at the results, and if your testosterone level is too low, Dr. Petty and his staff can help you and give you an option to increase your testosterone levels to get rid of some or all of those symptoms. pettycliniclowt.com.
The secret to living your best life is pizza, obviously. Golden crust made from scratch, 3 fresh signature cheeses, and the toppings, crispy old world pepperoni, savory Italian sausage, bacon. That's called a dream team. Find everything you need to live your best life and more at Marco's Pizza. Owner Bob Mock has been delivering pizza since 2001 and is the proud owner of 4 locations in Waco, Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and soon to be open in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jeweler, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. This is a great time for your business.
Exactly. And one other thing we do that a lot of people don't know is we buy jewelry, heirloom pieces, gold, silver bars, gold bullion, watches, anything you may have that you want to. If you don't want to use it and remake something like I did in a state yesterday and I looked at 35 pieces, well, they're probably going to sell me back 30 because it's something they're not going to wear, nothing to use. So if you're looking to get a few bucks or to sell something or something you just don't wear anymore, I make my wife go through her jewelry box about every 6 to 8 months, and the things that she doesn't wear on a daily basis, this sounds horrible, but I take away from her and then I'll put in my estate counter, but then that gives me the chance to rebuy her something new moving forward. Instead of looking down 20 years down the road and you have 300 pieces of jewelry, it's something to refresh and make her buy something new along the way.
You want to know why they're successful? Brad Boozer, the owner of Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air in Waco.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, everyone. This is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like mortgage lending, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
High formation look for Baylor. They give it to the fullback. Touchdown, Baylor.
Why not?
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Tom Albers, staying in touch with you and your money through these difficult and changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
So yesterday evening, I just happened to glance at my timeline on Twitter. Brad Sham, of course, voice of the Cowboys, and I consider a great friend as well, posted the news about Ted Nichols-Payne at the age of 56, passed away suddenly. And the entire broadcast community, among everyone else that knew Ted, it's just been a gut punch, a kick in everywhere you could imagine. And Brad Sham knew Ted Nichols-Payne. We did as well. Brad, thanks for your time. And nothing really related to the Cowboys other than the fact he was an engineer for you. Your thoughts about Ted Nichols-Payne and just the devastating news?
Yeah, Smokey, thank you for giving me a chance to talk about him. He was our engineer, and he was Eric Nadell's and Matt Hicks' engineer on the Rangers network. But he was way more than that. He was. I mean, I knew Ted for more than 30 years. I worked with him for, gosh, it feels like at least 25 working in our booth. And he was so much more than just the best engineer any of us have ever worked with. And sometimes it's hard to explain this to people who are not in our business. And it's unnecessary to explain it to anyone who is. Because when you work as part of a crew over a period of time, you're a family, you're a unit, you're a team, even though folks might not think so, in much the same way that the team whose games you're describing functions as a team. And so we just lost our right arm. We just lost the guy who kept us going, kept us on the air, but he was way more than that. Because when you work together, and you know this, Smokey, when you work together with people for a long time, this was what I said in my tweet, you're family. We're not just work colleagues. We're not just friends. And the things that Ted did for people to make them feel important were things that we kind of wish everyone would do, but he did them effortlessly and without you knowing it. And so here's a guy who only the people in the business got to talk to or hear his voice or know his personality. But when you do what you said you did, you go on social media and you look at not only the volume but the nature of the outpouring of response for him, you begin to grasp that this is not just some ordinary fellow we just lost. And the thing that really hit me yesterday was, gosh, I hope he knew this.
Yeah.
Because I know Ted well. And my sense is, I don't know if he knew how much this many people loved him and thought about it. And I have a suspicion that he'd be surprised to see all of this. And that's a real shame, because that doesn't need to be the case. And so I know the people on our crew, our Cowboys radio crew, we've been texting back and forth. Even today, we're each processing it in our own way, and we're all very close, and we're trying to both check in on each other and see how one another is doing. And at the same time, I am thinking about, have I done the job? Do I do the job that I want to do to make sure that people know how I feel about them? Did I do that for Ted? I think I did. I think Ted knew how much I valued him, but I'm not sure. And so I'm resolving to not have to ask myself that question anymore, because this is part of life. It's not a good part. It's not a part we like, but we can do something about the way that we interact with the people in our lives. And that can be a person that you're in a significant relationship with, or it can be someone you work with all the day, every day, all the time, and you never really talk about it, but you really have a high regard for that person, or it can be someone who you see bagging your groceries all the time, and you wind up talking to them, and you realize that that's a quality person, but you never say anything to them. You never stop and say, you really make my day better. I just want you to know. And I wish we would, because if I knew that we all did that, then I wouldn't wonder if Ted really knew.
I remember one time, and it was a corner store like, Sefco or whatever it was, Valero, where I walked in the front door of a convenience store, and there was a young lady behind the counter that was as bubbly and happy and not fake. It was just unbelievable. And she was fantastic. And I went there 2 or 3 times, and I kept noticing that. And you know what I did? I picked up the phone and called the store and asked for the supervisor and told the supervisor how amazing this girl was. And then I spoke with her the next time I was there to let her know that. Didn't know her much, but
right. She made your life better in that little way. And for you to make sure that she knew that you told her boss that made her life better in ways you can't even imagine. So I think it's an important thing that we need to do. And if that's what Ted Nichols-Payne's legacy is, then I think we can be okay with that.
He helped everybody too, Brad. It wasn't just those who paid him. It wasn't just where he got a check from.
Oh, no. It was everybody he came in contact with.
Yep.
He was goofy and nerdy and funny and smart and opinionated and selfless. He took it personally to make sure that every broadcast he worked on sounded 100% of what it could sound. And if it wasn't, he took it as his fault, even though it almost never was. And he just wanted to make everybody be the best they could be. And don't we need more of that? I've said this to a couple of people. I really made it. My personal belief is that he was better at his job than I am at mine. And I hope I can live up to the kind of human being that he was.
One time I got money in the budget for me to give him a couple $100 when we got the Oxnard to cover the Cowboys, because he always would help us with something. Always would help us when we had this or that. Or he had an extra headset or something, because he had all that stuff for so many shows. And I brought a check to him at the start of camp one year, and he said, "Don't worry about the check. Don't use the budget. All I just want is a couple of bowls of your beans."
There you go. That's who he was.
Yep.
Because first of all, he understood the budget. He understood what your budget was and how that might impact you. And just give me some of that chili. That's all I really want.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's the truth.
Yeah. Brad, it's a gut punch, no question about it. 56 suddenly. I heard earlier today Jared Sandler trying to explain, the radio broadcast with how Hicksy handled it and others as well, and it's just unbelievable what he meant to so many people. We appreciate you sharing your ideas about him as well.
You're so welcome, Smokey. I appreciate you having me to talk about that.
Thank you, Brad Sham, Hall of Fame broadcaster, recently Texas Sports Hall of Fame inductee in the media section, of course, among any other things that you can do broadcast-wise. Brad Sham. Garrett, do we owe a break? We'll take a break here, come back, a couple more notes. Paul's out, no top 5 today, but we got plenty to get to. 254-339-1122 is the text line, and this is Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment, and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. State Fair tornado fries, nachos, and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Make this a summer sales event is happening now at Allen Samuels on the new 2022 Ram 1500 Crew Cab Lone Star. With special values up to $7,000 or get $1,500 bonus cash and 2.9% for 72 months. Ram trucks are designed to be durable, functional, and stylish. This legendary award-winning truck gives you that first-class feel. Allen Samuels in Waco, the place to shop for Ram trucks. First responders get $500 extra cash.
Come by. Let's be friends.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, cause weight gain, and wreak havoc on your sexual desire and performance. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results, so if you're tired of being tired, I challenge you to man up and Google search Low T Waco or go online pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $150 a month, includes lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, follow-up visits compared to $395 a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T as board-certified physician consultations will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone available. Contact Petty Clinic Low T today, just off Highway 84 on Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway. Petty Clinic Low T, helping men become the high-performance men they deserve to be. PettyClinicLowT.com or Google search Low T Waco.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube.
Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports take you up until 6 o'clock. Appreciate your time. Behind the scenes, Emery Winter, Jack McKenzie, and Garrett Ross. We appreciate them every single day. They are, for us, what Ted Nichols-Payne was for many of the stations and those who had broadcast in the Dallas and Fort Worth area. We always try to make sure we mention them at least as much as we can, because without them, we're not on the air. From Catman in the Mountains, a Kansas State fan. Love the guy. Love you guys. The philosophy worked for positive thinkers and me personally a number of times. He's the one that brought up the old cattle buyer. Used to say, make the best thing that ever happened to you. When you face a bad deal, Texas and Oklahoma leaving is the best thing that ever happened to the Big 12, and he just attached his name to it. Catman, thank you very much.
I mean, I go back to what I said earlier. You know, that was the point I was trying to make in terms of the Big 12, and the comment that was picked up by some random Texas site was, yeah, I mean, I think relationship-wise, they're as good as they've probably, or about to be as good as they've ever been, you know, barring Cincinnati or BYU or UCF or Houston coming in and thinking that all of a sudden they run things. Like if, you know, Fertitta comes walking in like he's Vince McMahon about to boss everybody around, that's not going to fly. I mean, I'm sorry, pal, but that's not going to fly around these parts. So with that kind of stuff now out of the way, I think, you know, on an operational level and respect level, it's going to be as good as it's ever been in all its variations. And I think I went on a bit of a rant a couple months back that was basically echoing what you're saying as well. Is what do you do if you're the Big 12? You go win the whole damn thing. I mean, that's what you do. You go out and you just win as much as you possibly can. You have fun. You get titles, and you hopefully get some good TV deals along the way as a result of the successes that you're having. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to be following the Big 12 as close as ever. Once Oklahoma and Texas leave, that's not going to change. I'll follow them, off to the SEC, but I'm still going to be covering the Big 12, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in front of them right now. I think that they are sitting there in prime territory to, have not only a dominant grip on, college basketball to do, or college basketball headlines and results and championships, but in college football as well. It's going to be an uphill battle compared to, what they've had, because now they are losing their two blue bloods, but I think that there's enough quality programs and enough creativity and enough great leadership and enough new change that's probably overdue but will be good, that they're all going to be, sitting in a spot where they're going to be able to compete, and more teams that can compete, the better. Just got to have Oklahoma State finish the deal, last year and get an opportunity to get in that playoff, or have Baylor not lose that TCU game and then go beat Oklahoma State and get into that playoff. That's what they need. They need some teams outside of the two that are always talked about to go and make big splashes, and some have. I mean, Kansas has done that plenty in basketball. Baylor in basketball just a couple of years ago as well. Texas Tech competed, but in football they need to have more teams not just knocking on the door but breaking through that bad boy, and I think that they'll be fine once they kick that down.
From Joel, call me naive if you want, but you just got 4 new brands coming in addition to a few darn good ones that'll come on after Texas and Oklahoma leave. Just so happens 3 of those for new programs coming in. Some of the largest markets of any football programs in the country, such a floor, fastest growing area in the country, the largest school in the country. They have done quite a bit with a lot less, talking about the Big 12. Some of that, not grammar, but maybe some of the spelling got me. All the programs coming in to the Big 12 are trending in the right direction. Who's to say the Big 12 did not gain with a bonus and affiliation, that these 3 are of the programs, of the 4, won't significantly narrow even the brand gap in a few years after losing Texas and Oklahoma. I'm not here to say that they'll reach the level, brand, whatever, of Texas and Oklahoma, but there are some really interesting futures with some of the teams, if not all the teams, joining the Big 12 here in the next year.
Well, some of that this just won't be allowed because they don't have 100 years of history like some people are resorted to point to, because they don't really have a whole lot of recent history. But there's not going to be that, well, we've been an institution since 1901 and all that kind of jazz. But you want to be the new kid on the block conference? New is not bad. I think, if anything, new is probably overly needed in college football. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be some brands that aren't going to sit there and bring with them all of those years of tradition and alumni and roots and all of that. But they are going to bring what should be some good football, some good basketball, and some good ideas, hopefully, and some fresh faces and some fresh fans. And I'm not worried about the Big 12. I'm really not. I know that they're not going to be the SEC or the Big 10 as far as money goes. And I know it's going to be an uphill battle, but again, I go back to a conference that seems to be on the same page for the first time maybe ever in its history outside of when it was founded. And even then, I don't know how on the same page everybody was. I only think that's going to pay dividends. I'm very interested to hear Brett Yormark and kind of his vision and how much we hear about that on Wednesday as he's introduced as a new commissioner. Excited to see those new teams join the fold. And I guess the big questions I have are just, when is Texas and Oklahoma actually leaving? When is that actually going to occur? Is that this year? Or is that next year? Or is that the year after? And finally, the contract runs out in 2025, and then we all know for sure they're gone, or does it happen before then? But yeah, I mean, I've got high hopes for the Big 12. And the more, K-State, you said as a K-State fan, more K-State can have big recruiting weekends like they just got done with and can keep building on that program under Kleiman. Maybe they find themselves back into the spotlight that they were there under in the 90s and the early 2000s when they were competing for national championships. I mean, they've been there and done that. Baylor's been knocking on the door. TCU's knocked on the door. Oklahoma State's knocked on the door. UCF's knocked on the door. I mean, Houston's knocked, I could go on and on. There's a lot of quality programs. This is not some B-league by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that they would certainly benefit from an expanded playoff like others would. That remains to be seen. But again, keep knocking on the door, and eventually you're bound to bust through it. And I think they got a lot of teams that are going to be knocking pretty hard here over the next few years.
From Justin R., why does the Big 12 have UCF on such an island? I mean, you would think they would have learned from having West Virginia on an island for all these years. What did they learn? West Virginia is a part of the conference. They've just added people near their island with UCF and also with Cincinnati, so I'm not sure exactly what that means.
I know exactly what it means. It means that they're out on an island by themselves and nobody close proximity-wise, but what has been like the main talking point of realignment over the last week and a half? Geography doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yep. It's not being taken into account. They are not worried when they're adding, USC and UCLA to the Big Ten about the fact that LA is on a way bigger, farther island for those two schools than Morgantown is for what the Big 12 is going to look like, right? So, I mean, that's not a concern. If they were worried about just logistics of what's the easiest travel, sure, go get Charlotte and, any other, let's go get Liberty. Let's go get close schools, but what does that do ultimately? Does that bring in more money? Absolutely not. It just makes West Virginia have a little less time on an airplane. But what does that really do for the conference in the long run? Absolutely nothing. So, yeah, I mean, the geographic part of it, I understand where you're coming from. And maybe in years past that would have been more of a focal point. But I think it's become very clear in this round of realignment that they're not worried at all about the geography of where these teams are coming from. So
otherwise, why USC and UCLA?
Yeah, I mean, they'd go long trip. They'd go all in on Notre Dame, I guess, or maybe I don't know who the candidates would be in the Midwest that would make more sense geographically for the Big Ten. But yeah, it's about brands. It's not about who's closest. But yeah, at least West Virginia will have some closer counterparts. Still not ideal. It's not Marshall right there or Virginia right there or whatever, but Pitt right there. But maybe one day it will be. Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe if, in fact, there are or is attrition or if there are others who join, maybe there will be something closer to that. If the ACC gets blown up, and I don't think they will, but there's Pittsburgh and there's others as well. Virginia Tech and Virginia would probably end up in another conference, would not be a part of the Big 12. Not even sure Pittsburgh or Virginia Tech would want that either. Oregon State fan.
I mean, that goes into a whole other conversation of what options would they have. Yeah. I mean, were they going to be like Kansas talking about, we're going to the Big Ten? Or are you? Do you need an invite first? Iowa State, same thing. And I'm not talking about their fan bases as a whole, but there's definitely a guy from that school that predicts that, or really overrates where his school would end up if things were to fall apart. So, yeah, you never know.
And one thing we continue to try to do is hear from other fan bases that might be twisting in the wind. And we had, in fact, segments on Friday, Oregon State, Washington State, among others. From the 206 Oregon State fans, just like the rest of the Pac-12, we are crushed by the exodus of USC and UCLA. Oregon State fans are doubly upset with one of our best rosters in Oregon State history, prepping for the upcoming season. In addition, Oregon State has seen a lot of growth in recent years as the second largest Pac school in the Northwest. And what a lot of folks don't realize is USC and UCLA have been average over the last 5 years. And again, I get it, but the win-loss record, it hasn't affected UT. They're big, strong, powerful, and so they're going to always be someone that people want.
Yeah, USC's been not totally irrelevant, but they haven't really been worth spending much time on for the last, 4 or 5 years especially, and that's not going to stop them from being the most coveted brand out there on the West Coast, right? I mean, it didn't stop it. They're heading to the Big Ten now, and they've been entirely forgettable basically for the last few years. So that matters not at all. Brands, that's kind of what I was talking about. The schools they always have that default fallback of, well, we've been around for forever, and like you're always a part of the club. You know what I mean? Like some teams are just always going to have that history, and a UCF or some new booty on the block is scary to them because they don't have 100 years of history behind them. They don't have all of that. And you're not allowed in this club, so it's a weird dynamic and a weird kind of a deal. But I mean, for Oregon State fans, I completely understand. I mean, it's exactly how a lot of Big 12 schools felt this time a year ago, and it ended up working out for them. I do think that if you're an Oregon State fan, you probably would feel a bit better today versus, let's say, last Monday, right, where it really appeared as though the Pac-12 was probably just DOA. Like, they had no chance of surviving, and now – I mean, there's thoughts that they could just move forward like the Big 12 did with the 10 they have, and then, maybe go add San Diego State or, UNLV or whoever it is, Boise State. They at least have options. I've seen the Houston thing thrown around quite a bit. I don't know. I mean, not Houston, but the SMU thing thrown around quite a bit. I really don't know how much that would make a difference. But it would be a unique idea and would be, just another sign of the conference trying to steady the ship. So, I understand the nervousness. I've been there. I think a lot of people watching have been there with their respective fan bases because we do have a lot of Big 12 fans. And just hold tight and see what happens. But it's going to be different. Doesn't necessarily, though, have to be a horrific thing in the long run. No one's demoted them just yet. They're still a part of the party until they're told otherwise, and they haven't been told that just yet. So we'll see.
From the 512, and there's so many we can't get to, but there's a question, and I'll answer it and close it out today. Any chance the ACC will expand? Sikkim from the 512, that's in the Austin area. Anything and everything is possible. Everything, nothing is off the table. No matter what you may think or hear, nothing is out of the question or off the table because of what we've now seen in college athletics in the last 12 months.
There's just a lot of major hurdles in the way of those things now that there wasn't quite that hurdle in front of USC and UCLA or in front of Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, I guess the hurdles for them are their granted rights agreements and the millions that they'd have to pay, which is why they're still in the conferences that they're in. But yeah, as far as the rest of it, like, hey, could Oregon State end up in the Big 12 one day? Sure, why the hell not? I mean, who knows? Could the Pac-12 and the Big 12 merge? I doubt it, but sure, who knows? Could the ACC get Notre Dame? Probably not, but sure. I mean, never say never. That's what I've learned in life, if anything. So, yeah, I mean, that's anything, pretty much anything you throw out there in today's college football, it could maybe happen one day. So.
All right, Emery Winter, Garrett Ross, Jack McKenzie. We got one more day in the studio tomorrow. Then we head to Arlington for Big 12 Media Days on Wednesday and Thursday. Been in touch with so many different of the SID's media relations people. Ought to be a hell of a couple of days. And as Craig mentioned, Brett Yormark introduced Wednesday morning the new Big 12 commissioner. Be interested to hear from him, as will Dr. Linda Livingstone, who will introduce him out of Baylor. For Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina back on Monday, maybe Tuesday next week, if at all, if he comes back from Hawaii. I'm David Smoak. Thank all of you. Chat room, text line, anyone that's not even a part of those, but you watch and listen, and our sponsors. Good night, Sikkim 365 Radio.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills.